Hello, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to Knights of the Last Call. My name is Derek Milland, and I am happy to have everybody here. Hopefully, everyone is doing well. Unfortunately, the overlay that I use for my chat is kind of screwed up, so I kind of had to rig something together here really quickly. So that is what's going on here. Hopefully everybody is doing well tonight. I don't know what's going on here. The lighting seems crazy today, and I'm not really sure why that is, but it is. There we go. Maybe that's a little better. Any case, sweet. Test. Yes, test. Anyways, well, we have almost nobody watching tonight, so I guess it doesn't really matter what we do. But welcome. I think this stream has kind of run its course. I think people are pretty sick of it at this point, and I don't blame them. So I don't know that we're gonna finish this series. I think there's other things that we probably would want to do with our streams. So it's possible that this might be the very last one of these. They haven't done really good well on YouTube views, and they really have not been getting very much support from viewers, and we haven't really been getting a lot of people in the live stream, and everybody just wants me to talk about Pathfinder 2 feats pretty much nonstop. So maybe that's what we'll do. Since it's one thing to say what I want, but it's another thing entirely when it's what the people want from the channel. So anyways, hello and welcome everybody to Tuesday. Actually, we're going to have some, I don't want to say scheduling problems, but we're going to have some interesting dilemmas because we're going to be starting our backup actual play games here soon. We're going to have our root game, and we're also going to have, I'm hoping we could have another game. I don't know if that would be another sort of independent RPG, or if maybe we would play Pathfinder 2 or, something like that. But then it's like, okay, well, we go live twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we'd have to sort of start thinking about what it is that we even do with the channel. In terms of how do we get other live streams out there? I mean, I said this, we just had our Patreon live stream update. We have a monthly call. It's a Zoom call where I bring in all the members of the Patreon and we talk about the business. I talk about how much money the channel made. I talk about the viewership growing. I talk about any sort of, logistic problems that we're having. And then we also went over a survey that I had given out to the patrons, and we kind of asked their feedback about how's the channel going, what would they like to see. And people still really want to see Pathfinder 2 stuff, and I'd love to give it to them. And people really want to see us playing games, not just Pathfinder 2, but Powered by the Apocalypse or Blades in the Dark or Forged in the Dark, I should say, or maybe even some other system. But then, that suddenly means I suddenly have to start going live probably more than twice a week if I want to fit that all in. So it's kind of a tough nugget to crack, but we'll figure it out. Let's see what we got here. Frostjack. Hello, Frostjack. Hello, Bernardo. How's it going? Colin says the series is fantastic. I, for one, really appreciate your thoughts on system design and what makes a good game, and that's what this series provides. Well, Colin, that is what we are here for, as well. Hi, friends. Hello, London. How are you? Well, the books are usually in the background, so now we know what we're looking at. That is true. We're making it a way forward. Bit Polygon says, sad. I came here for the archetypes ranked, but I stayed for the all books ranked. Again, I mean, ultimately, I have to make content that I think is going to be popular and that my patrons, are interested and want to see. So I kind of have to balance that between that. And, the three ways that I do that are how many people are here for the live stream, how many views do we get total over the course of the VOD or the VOD or basically the replays. And then, lastly, it's like how much, how much tipping and supporting do I get on live streams? If the people are really excited for the topic and people come in and super chat and tip, that's a very nice indication that people are pretty excited about that topic. So, and don't get me wrong, we've had a lot of nice support for this series, but compared to other series that we do, it's not always as nice. GM Scott is here. And by the way, GM Scott, I'm glad you are here because we are going to be starting off today with 13th Age. I finally found the book. So a couple weeks delayed, but we'll get there. Bernardo says, my 5e group is asking me to GM Fate and eventually Pathfinder 2nd Edition because of the Pinkerton situation. Thanks, Watsy. I mean, listen, whatever causes them to want to switch or change, I mean, that's fine. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing 5th edition D&D if that's what you and your group like, but I think there's a lot of, RPGs out there. I wouldn't recommend people eat the same meal every day, and I wouldn't recommend people play the same video game for months, if not years at a time. I personally like exploring new games and new systems and new ways of doing things, and I appreciate that some game systems are better for certain styles of play than others. I wouldn't say that my style of play is exactly, monodimensional. There are times when I want something very quick and easy and kind of pulpy and action-packed. There are times where I want something a little bit more grindy and complicated, and sometimes the genres themselves support different rules systems and rules engines. So, if the genre is supposed to be fast-paced and quick, then I don't want a game system that's really kludgy and slow because it's going to mesh with the genre. So, I think there's a lot of thing there. SC Voldo in chat says, still playing EverQuest EQ since 2001. Yes, but you play other games as well. And so that, it's okay to have your favorites. It's okay to have one that you always go back to. I'm just saying you obviously have explored the space somewhat beyond just that one game. Right, Bernardo, board game players, most people talk about their board game collections. When you go over to someone's house, it's very rare. Now, it might start that way. I'm not saying it might not start. I've seen a lot of people. This isn't as common anymore because I think it's still fairly common with Catan. But I know that back in the day, you saw a lot of people who grew up playing Monopoly or whatever game of life, and then they found Catan, and they were like, wow, this game is better. And then they would go out and they would get Cities and Knights expansion. They would get Seafarers expansion. They would get Explorers and Pirates expansion. And then they'd have just all these Catan expansions. Catan. But I promise you that person is not going to stick with Settlers of Catan for the next year or two. By the next time you go over their house 3 or 4 months from now, they're going to have, Carcassonne, and they're going to have Race for the Galaxy and Puerto Rico and Agricola. And, they're just going to start building up a board game collection. And if anything, I think a lot of people with board game collections run into the same problem I have with role-playing games, which is there are just too many role-playing games out there that I'm interested in, and I want to try, and I want to learn, and I want to play. And sometimes it's hard just to get them all to the table. So, yeah.
London tip $3
hey.
For ABR's funeral. We didn't deserve you.
For ABR's funeral, we did not deserve you. Thank you. Again, I don't. The YouTube Stream Elements API is messed up. There must be something going on with YouTube because, again, I usually have a thing in my OBS that does some YouTube algorithm, does some YouTube API stuff to make the chat better formatted for my use of my OBS stream. And that's also why Stream Elements will call out your tip or whatever. But I guess that is just completely borked because it is definitely not working right now. Well, thank you, London. Appreciate that. A RPG campaign has the potential to last years, not quite like a board game. Well, yeah, Cam. I mean, that's totally reasonable. All the more reason why, Cam, I think being willing to invest into a new system with a new campaign is totally reasonable. For example, I have some very complex board games that I particularly like, and I could understand that if people are coming over for a board game night, they may not want to sit down and learn a new game, which might take an hour or an hour and a half to learn how to play, and then sit down and play the game once, which will take several hours, and then potentially never play that game again. I can understand why they may not want to make that investment. On the other hand, if it's a game that we are going to continue to play for weeks, if not months, if not years, to your point, I think making a small investment of learning a new system, when you're talking about investing the next half year to year of your life into playing it, seems like a relatively small ask. So I actually think it's easier to do that in role-playing games. In fact, I could tell you personally that when a role-playing game campaign of mine is finished, without exception, I want to do a different system for the next campaign. It is very rare that I ever have the desire to run a game system back to back. Pillsbury. Hey, it has been a while. Hey, it has been a while. Welcome back to the stream. Welcome back to the show. Hope you're having a good time. These APIs are probably part of some new subscription level. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I was having these problems last time, GM Scott, and I told myself, remember to fix that, and then I forgot to fix it or look into doing it. So I'll probably have to spend some time on Reddit. I mean, honestly, this is the problem with YouTube. Like, its support for live streaming is horrible. I know a lot of people are like, oh, switch from Twitch to go to YouTube, or in our case, people are like, oh, you should stream on Twitch, not YouTube. And I mean, we're pretty well established here, so I didn't want to make the switch. But honestly, the tools and support that YouTube give us as a live stream platform are horrible. Yeah, teaching Power Grid every time you play it is not fun. Exactly. Not only that, GM Scott, but people never really get a chance, who are sitting down to play it for the first time, they don't get a chance to really experience the depth and nuance of a game system. So, yeah. I mean, that's a big part of the reason. So there was something in I mean, people say, oh, you could do it at the same time. But I've also heard that, like, it's against certain terms of service or something. I don't know. But even then, like, I interact with the chat. So for me, if I had Twitch and YouTube going, it's like, what am I going to do? Like, read both chats, you know? Like, I can't do that. So, oh, excuse me. I actually just woke up from a nap too, so there's that. All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Assuming this didn't break. There she is. All right, got too much stuff over here. All right, we've got here 13th Age, which is the book that I think a lot of people have come to realize is a fantastic stepping stone between the world of D20 fantasy and more indie or more light narrative RPGs. 13th Age was conceived by as a brainchild of Rob Heinsoe and Jonathan Tweet. Rob Heinsoe was the lead designer of Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. I'm sorry, Jonathan Tweet was the lead designer of Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, and Rob Heinsoe was the lead designer of Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, and they happen to be really good friends. And so after both of them got fired by Wizards of the Coast, they decided, you know what, we'll make, and this is before, right around the time like 5th edition was being like kind of play tested. I don't think 5th edition had officially come out yet. And they said, you know what, let's make our version of 5th edition. And we're going to take what we learned from 4th edition. We're going to take what we learned from 3rd edition. We're going to put it into one game, but we're also going to look at the awesome, cool, burgeoning indie game movement, which has come out in the last 5 or 6 years, you know, Fate, Powered by the Apocalypse. And we're going to put some of those narrative-focused mechanics, those sort of narrative-first mechanics, into a D20 game. And 13th Age is what you get. Now, this is 1st edition, and while there is not officially a 2nd edition Kickstarter, there is like a 2nd edition beta test out there right now. So there is probably going to be a second edition of this coming soon. But, keep that in mind. But again, I've read the beta test, and while they are going to tweak some things, they're calling let me put it this way. They're calling it a second edition, but it's, we were debating about Pathfinder, whether that was a second edition. This is really more of like a 1.5, in my personal opinion. So we're going to give it some bonus time because GM Scott paid for this a long time ago. So 13th Age is basically like your standard D20 game. You've got races, you've got classes, there's combat rules. What really changes about the game is if you've played 4th edition and you've played 3rd edition, you're going to see that there's elements in here that sort of tie back to 4th edition D&D. The classes are very well balanced. They use resource mechanics. It's not as cut and dry and video gamey as, say, World of Warcraft was, but it is very, very, defined, and it's kind of got like, here is this cool power that you have. You can use it once per battle. You can use it once per day. They use terms like once per battle. In addition, like the game is designed to not be used on a tactical miniature grid. So it doesn't have complex rules for attack bonuses and penalties and all that other stuff. In fact, the ranges of spells are things like range close, range far away, range nearby. So the idea is that it's using mechanics in a defined way that doesn't just say range, I guess, whatever you want it to be, but it is saying we don't need to define every single thing for you. And that makes the game feel and play a lot differently. Additionally, there's a lot of narrative mechanics in here. There's a system of icon dice showing how your character is connected to the major movers and shakers in the world. From very first level, for level 1, your character is important. They are not just some adventurer. They are a important piece in sort of the 13th Age. And they have these connections to the kings and the queens and the archmages and the priests, the high priestesses of the land. But these icon dice actually kind of introduce an element of sort of like fate points, player agency, being able to sort of seize narrative control, change things up, introduce plot complications due to their narrative relationships. And these are a mechanical thing that the game itself will reference. It's just a fantastic game. It's very well designed, very quick, very easy, fun to play through. I think the PDF is pretty cheap. I think it's worth a look if you haven't seen it already. The monster design is excellent, very, very fast forward. The monsters are a joy to use, very, very easy, while still being very cool and thematic and iconic. So it's a very, really fun system. In my personal opinion, it plays a lot quicker than, combat wise, and then your standard Dungeons & Dragons or your standard Pathfinder 2, but it's still D20. I mean, it's still 6 stats D20. So it's a pretty sweet, amazing game. And I give 13th Age like a solid A, even maybe an A+. I think it's a really great game, and I think they have iterated well. And this to me is like a fantastic example of a game. And I can tell you that it's A because I have run multiple 13th Age campaigns. It also only has 10 levels. And that think of it's like D&D, but you skip levels. You go straight from you start at level 2 and you go to 4 and 6 and 8 and 10 and 12. Because level 10 in this game is like level 20 in other D20 games. Like you're fighting Balors and demons and, greater dragons. But it's it basically just sort of says, let's heighten that. Let's go through that a little bit faster or quicker. And I actually think that is a really cool thing. So yeah, I give it an A, leaning towards A+. And the changes I have seen for second edition make me pretty excited. I think they're tweaking a few things, getting a little bit of math stuff right, but also I think making certain choices a little bit more compelling and interesting. I don't want to go off an example here, but one of the things in first edition is, there was feat trees. And like, you'd have to be like, okay, if you want to take the third feat in the feat tree, you had to take the second feat in the feat tree, and then you had to take the first feat in the feat tree. They got rid of that. So if you never took the first feat and you never took the second feat, you can come in and you can take the third feat in that sort of tree or whatever, or that progression. I really, really like that. I hate that kind of style, in my opinion, leads to people getting punished for not having a build. And I don't like builds. So that is a change I'm interested to see. All right, Zach says, don't I remember something about leveling up every session for Mike Shea? So the other thing about this book, Zach, is, and the only reason I'm spending so much time on it is because GM Scott literally paid like $25 for it. Inside the book, Zach, you'll see a lot of these sidebars that they put in here. This is like a note to the players, a note to the game master. And these sidebars are actually like the writers of the book, like talking directly to you, the reader of the book. They're not like sidebars in a normal sense. They're really just almost like an aside. One of the sidebars in this game, Zach, is the idea of what they call the 10 session campaign, where you level up at the end of every session. And I'll be honest with you, Zach, 2 of the times I have run 13th Age, I have run it as a 10 session campaign. And it was awesome. Actually, it was incredible. We were able to tell a really, really awesome story at the end, and everybody felt really powerful and really cool. And you were doing a lot of really neat things. So it was pretty fun. All right. Rolemaster Standard Rules, which I bought from Half Price Books for like $7. You know, it's funny. I used to work by a Half Price bookstore. I don't work there anymore, so I haven't worked there since 2017. So I really haven't been to a Half Price bookstore in a long time. And I went in one the other day, and I was shocked to see that the role-playing game section, which number 1 used to be overflowing, but also number 2 used to be like $5, was now all behind glass, and they had ridiculous prices on some of these frickin' RPG books. I have no idea. Like nowadays, I would just say like, you know, this thing would probably be like $50 in the case now. It's like just insane. Yeah, so this is Rolemaster, which I have flipped through and read, but I honestly have never really fully played. This is a game that is used as sort of a mockery of what a complex game is. Rolemaster uses a D100 system that you can level up your skill ranks by buying percentages, and then you have to roll on your skill percentage rank bonus. It has very complicated rules, very long traits of your character sheet. From nowadays, we'd say it's like Pathfinder 2 character sheet. It's famous for having like absolutely ridiculous rules, like, you know, oh, you got hit? Okay, roll this chart. Okay, it hit your nerve. Okay, now you have nerve damaged. Okay, make another check to see if you drop what you're holding. Okay, you drop what you're holding, and you also are permanently disabled because you suffered irreversible nerve damage to your left arm. And it's like, it's a very, very, like here, for example, it's like, this is a great example of a chart. Pace limitation chart. Okay, so here's your current weight penalty. Here's your maximum pace. Here's how long you can maintain a walk, a jog, a run, a sprint, a fast sprint, a dash. It's like, it's the most hyper granular rule set of all time. And it really sort of reflects that mentality, I think, during the 80s and into the 90s of like, it was like, it's like RPGs went in 2 directions during like the 80s and the 90s, right? Like the one path started going down like the Vampire the Masquerade, White Wolf, World of Darkness kind of storytelling aspect. And the other one went down this kind of like GURPS, Champions, Rolemaster, very, very like hyper build, hyper granular. You know, in some ways, I would say that like PF2 is kind of, in some ways, the spiritual descendant of Rolemaster in that it is a very, very complex game with a lot of different moving parts. And obviously it's not quite as fiddly as this probably, is in terms of like the number of rolls that you're making to determine everything. But it's definitely more, I think, from that lineage or that side of the RPG tree than it is otherwise. I honestly would have, I would have no interest in playing this game ever. Maybe, you know what? Like, it wouldn't even be worth it for me to learn it because it's like, just to learn it would require too much effort for a game that I know I'm not going to really truly be all that interested in playing. It seems like if you're a simulationist player, this is a simulationist character's, type player's dream. And I've said many times on this channel, I've sort of bounced off simulationist games. But Rolemaster is a classic, and it's good for the laughs about the person falling off their toilet while going to the bathroom and suffering irreversible nerve damage. It's not in this book, but yeah, I'm going to give Rolemaster a D, just because I wouldn't play it. But it's an interesting part of the story. Frostjack, absolutely. This is the game that Cybersmith should be playing. In fact, Frostjack, this is the standard rule. I think there's a different rule book for like GMs. This book probably does have very comprehensive, very extensive, and very realistic in terms of being as realistic as you can to model something like decompression and water pressure rules. All right, so that's Rolemaster. And GM Scott, by the way, says, I don't even think I would play it, meaning Rolemaster these days. Versus D would fill this niche nicely for me. All right. I don't think this book would, because again, this is the standard rules. There's also like arms law, Rolemaster law, game master law. Like there was a bunch of different sort of expansions for that. My guess is this is not going to be in here. This is mostly the player facing book. Now I almost want to get the, Kendall, Kendall, this is focused on all my books. I just pull random ones out of the pile. So we've done bestiaries, we've done splat books, we've done core rule books, we've done it all. Do they have a bird law? Well, if you want to go toe to toe on bird law, I could tell you a thing or two. Listen, we'll all get back to our hot plates in a second. All right. All right. Fiendish Codex 2, Tyrants of the Nine Hells. Look at that. Look at the authors on this book. Robin Laws, holy shit, and Robert Schwalb. Holy shit. Robert Schwalb, by the way, wrote Shadows of the Demon Lord. He wrote the Chronicle system for Green Ronin, and of course Robin Laws is famous for Gumshoe and a million other games. But apparently Wizards of the Coast got them in 3rd edition to write the Tyrants of the Nine Hells book. So this is a 3.5 edition book all about our favorite devils. So we've already sort of talked about these books that 3.5 did. These aren't my favorite books, I'll be honest with you. But just like the Drow book that we did earlier, in my opinion, this is how you do a sort of focused lore plus mechanic book. Okay? You come in, you give one book dedicated to devils. And you can see here in the table of contents, we have chapter 1 is all about devils. And it's going to give us all the sort of mostly fluff information that we could ever want to know about diabolic culture and, what's going on in hell and how the blood war works and all this other stuff. And then you can get into some variant subsystems. Okay, you want devils to be a part of your game? Here is how you can determine the corruption score for corrupt acts and corrupt virtues. And then we have a sort of an atlas of, in this case, the 9 hells. So you have information about how to play in the 9 hells. Then, you guessed it. And of course, the 9 levels of hell. Do I know them all? I used to. Avernus. No, I would have gotten that one wrong. Stygia, Malboj, Maldemone, Carnia, Nessus. I would have gotten like 4 of the 5 of them. And then you start getting into more maps and stat blocks and feats and prestige classes and spells and magic items and monster entries, right? New devils. But the point is, it's like from toe to toe, this book, if you care about devils and you want to use devils prominently in your campaign, and you want to use, the rule of hell prominently in your campaign, this is a fantastic resource for you. If you don't want to do those things, this book is not for you. And I think that is a cool way to do that. Now, it might not be the best way to do it from a sales perspective, because from a sales perspective, yeah, exactly, London. I have to assume they don't sell well enough. I have to assume that they don't as well. Exactly. Because if people aren't interested in devils, or maybe they are interested in devils, but they're not going to be using them in their campaign anytime soon, why would you pick this book up? And the answer is you wouldn't. So I think that's why they try to make these books feel like they're kind of a grab bag of almost everything kind of mushed all together. But this, for me, as a game master, as a player, or whatever, I love having this, because this becomes like a module that I can just link into my campaign. And by adding the elements from this book into a campaign, suddenly that campaign has a different tone and flavor and feel, mechanically and narratively, because of the content of this book. So, and if I'm not doing a campaign like that, then it's simple. You leave this book on the shelf, and you don't let players choose prestige classes from it. You don't let players, right? Like, this is the thing with like Book of the Dead. I do not think, in Pathfinder 2, I do not think people should be ghouls or ghosts or zombies unless you are playing a campaign in like, Geb, or, some sort of, city where the living and the dead commingle or something like that. The idea that you just randomly are playing a game of D&D and it's like, oh yeah, my character is half devil and I have the devil binder prestige class. I hate that. I hate that. If we're playing the Nine Hells focused game, and maybe the PCs are all, they're not quite tieflings, but maybe they all have an infernal, they're like in scions of an infernal dynasty, like their bloodline is sort of tainted by hell, or maybe like one of their ancestors swore a pact of allegiance to, Asmodeus Sir, to, Despater or something like that. And like your whole campaign revolves around that. Like, awesome. Choose these prestige classes, choose these feats, choose these spells. That sounds awesome. But if we're not doing that kind of game, I don't want to see that shit in my campaign. Right? So I'm going to give this book a C- though. I mean, whatever. It's kind of mostly at the end of the day a splat book, and is what it is. Let's see here. Yes, campaign module. That's a great way. Yeah, that's how I like to think of it as. London Matthews, I agree. Colin says, I love going back to my 3.5 books for my Pathfinders 2 e-game. Better content than Paizo's grab bad books. I mean, at least it's better content. I mean, that depends on the author and depends on what they're doing with it. But it's certainly more focused, Colin, and I definitely respect that a lot. I don't know about aquatic adventures, but I think like seafaring is another example of that, where I think you could do that. I don't know if I'd want to do an aquatic campaign, but I suppose if you did a seafaring campaign, you'd probably get a fair amount of aquatic adventuring. Yeah, exactly. No, you cannot be a slime person in my Game of Thrones inspired fantasy politics game. I can't stand that. That drives me crazy. All right. I don't remember if we covered Thirsty Sword Lesbians or not. By the way, I just want to say thanks everybody for showing up. We have about 25 people today, so not not our biggest shows, but I respect that you all are here. Hopefully you're getting some value out of this. If you appreciate what you're seeing here, please remember to like and subscribe. And we'd love to see you maybe join us in chat, say a few words. If you really want to be part of the conversation, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. And of course, if you really want to show some love and support for this channel, feel free to use the YouTube Super Chat function, or we have a link in the description to our Stream Elements chat, or Stream Elements tip page, where you can tip us directly. You can bypass the YouTube middleman and just put directly money into the Knights of Last Call bank account, which is always nice. If you're willing to take the extra step, we appreciate it. Okay, apparently we did talk about TSL, but it is a fantastic variation of modern PBTA design, sort of a spiritual successor of Monster Hearts, but a little bit more, I obviously more focused on lesbians and gender queerness than Monsters, but Monster Hearts was a pretty queer game as well. It won gold last year. It's an amazing little set of rules. It's fantastic for space opera, or space opera-like, even if it's not in space, like type PBTA games. If you want to do a game where you have heroes that are just as good with a laser sword or a rapier as they are with bon mots and winning hearts and stealing, kisses before, sailing. If you want Zorro, or if you want Star Wars, or if you want Errol Flynn, or if you want Robin Hood, this is probably a really, really good game for that. So pretty sweet. But apparently we did it, so I'll move on. All right, this is the Sprawl, which is a PBTA game, so powered by the Apocalypse. Kind of the standard form factor of a powered by the Apocalypse game. This is Cyberpunk, Blade Runner, Shadowrun type action in PBTA world. I'll be honest with you. This book is a little older. This one came out 2015, so not super old. I thought it was a little older than that. The Sprawl is, in my personal opinion, number one, for this style of game, I personally think I would rather use Forged in the Dark. I think the idea of the runners, the cyberpunk thing, I think it's so perfect for the Forged in the Dark system. That being said, there is a Forged in the Dark game called Hack the Planet, which is kind of cyberpunky, but it's got a weird eco element to it. And I don't know that it's fully what I would want out of that game. So I actually think that is something that has not really been realized yet using the Forged in the Dark system. So the Sprawl is a good intermediary. That being said, I feel like it relies on some of the older terminology and older terms and mechanics from earlier games. It's very much inspired by the earlier versions of Apocalypse World, but luckily there are some elements here because this came out right around the time Blaze in the Dark was really starting to gain traction. So it does have ideas in here like countdown clocks and going on a mission and, again, kind of going through that process. It's got some, it's a little bit more complicated than your standard Powered by the Apocalypse game because, they got a lot of different moves in the game system. But, it's got basic moves and it's got, I don't know if I love this font. And it's got some pretty interesting playbooks. We got the driver, the fixer, the hacker, the hunter, the infiltrator, the killer, the pusher, the reporter, the soldier, and the tech. Cyberpunk isn't my favorite genre, and I feel like this game is probably too complex for a PBTA game, but maybe it's a right fit for your group. I'm gonna give the Sprawl a C- by Hamish Cameron. I don't know that I know him from anything else. Hey, it's more campaign modules. They really liked coming out with these, and they didn't sell well, which is probably why. So this is Lords of Madness. This is by James Jacobs, of Pathfinder fame, along with Steve Winter, legendary TSR author and writer, along with Richard Baker. Lords of Madness is what we just talked about with the Devils, but for, you guessed it, aberrations. If you want to do the campaign about beholders and weird cryptic entities invading from the far realms and from the beyond, and you want to have characters that have like secret symbiotes living within their body and doing like weird, aboleth possession and all sorts of variant beholders. And here's a whole chapter on beholders. There's a whole chapter on aboleths. I think there's a whole chapter on mind flayers. Yeah. Whole chapter on mind flayer. Hey, do you want to know about the internal anatomy of a mind flayer? neither do I. I don't care about that, but some people do, apparently. And this book is for you if that's the case. And of course, after about the first half-page book, or the first half of the book, you get into the splat part, right? We get into new monsters. We get into new feats, new prestige classes. Oh, here's the Aberration Hunter. Ooh, here's some inhuman gods for your cleric to, hunt, or for your character to worship. So, again, fantastic if you want to run that kind of game. Useless if you don't. Again, I like aberrations. I think this is probably a pretty cool idea to sort of base a campaign around, and I would think it'd be interesting if you really wanted to go down that kind of weird, almost Cthulhu-esque sort of approach to RPG games. But I like the style and the system. So Lords of Madness is going to get a it's still gonna get a D+ for me. It's still just a splat book with a bunch of lore that, quite frankly, I don't personally care about. But if you do really like that lore and you really want to learn more about the internal anatomy of mind flayers, grells, and beholders, there you go. Good stuff. All right. Legend of the Five Rings, 5th edition. Not 5th edition D&D, but the 5th edition of the Legend of the Five Rings game. And the first edition to be created under the Fantasy Flight Games logo. So they really changed the game up. Legend of the Five Rings is a game of sort of a fantasy Asia, mostly Japanese inspired, where the players play as samurai. And the best way to describe this game, in my personal opinion, is as a Bushido simulator. This game is trying to create drama and tension deliberately through its mechanics. The whole crux of this game is that your character has the concept of an honor, which is a numerical value rated between 0 and 100, that your character is sort of everything that your character does is going to make that honor score go up or down. If your character behaves honorably, your honor score will go up. If your character behaves dishonorably, your honor score will go down. But at the same time, and in a perfect world, your samurai would be a sort of machine where they would only follow the tenets of Bushido, and they would never let emotion cloud their judgment. They would only live to serve their lord. But of course, they're not a machine. They're human, very much human. And so the other half of this game is showing how having passions and having feelings and having to make tough decisions can really lead to some, I don't want to say angsty, but it can lead to some really, tough decisions. Like, one tenet of Bushido is called Chugo, which means loyalty. And Chugo means you must be loyal to your lord. You must follow your duty above all else. But there's another tenet of Bushido called Rei, which is courtesy. Or there's another one called, I don't remember the Japanese term for it, but it's compassion. So if your lord gives you a command to go into a neighboring clan's village and kill its peasants in order to prevent them from harvesting the rice crop, on one hand, you have to obey. But on the other hand, is that truly demonstrating compassion and courtesy? Probably not. So your lord has put you into sort of this almost impossible situation. Do I disobey my lord, or do I follow, the tenets of Bushido? But one of the tenets of Bushido is to follow your lord. So there's a lot of like Kobayashi Maru type situations. As Isaiah is saying, this game does use custom dice. They are similar to Genesis dice, but it's not quite as complicated. So if you've played the Star Wars game or Warhammer Fantasy 3rd Edition, or things like the Genesis system, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about the crazy dice. This only uses 2 custom dice. There's a custom D12, which has symbols on it, and then there's a custom D6, which has symbols on it. I will say that the art in the game is gorgeous. It's a beautifully laid out book. Oh, here we go. What was I saying? Courtesy is Rei. And there's duty and loyalty, which is Chugo. Compassion, which is Jin. But I thought we might have pictures of the dice here. We do, but they're very tiny, so we won't. Oh, there we go. So those are the pictures of the dice. There's a D6 and a D12, and they have got different symbols on there showing whether or not you are successful or not. This game is not perfect. It has a couple of, sometimes it feels a little underbaked. The layout and the editing, not great. The index is very bad. I will say this. There are a lot of times where you go, I know that's a rule somewhere, but I have no idea where it is. Sometimes they throw important rules into sidebars. I will say that the book felt like it really feels like it needs another pass at editing and arrangement. That being said, to me, this game occupies a very unique space in D&D, or D&D, in TTRPGs, which is when we talk about gamist, narrativist, and simulationist games, GNS. I have always said that the moment you start to lean more heavily towards two of those, if you try to be a gamist game with simulationist elements, that the narrative element of the game almost necessarily, algorithmically, suffers as a result of you putting emphasis into those two spaces. This game, I feel like, manages somehow to score a high game score, a high narrative score, and a high simulationist score. And that is one of the reasons why this game really stands out to me as being very interesting and unique, because it somehow manages to really scratch a lot of itches all at once. I can build kind of a complex mechanical character in a very gamey way while playing in a game which has very narrative, encouraging, and dare I say, enforcing mechanics, while also having rules which very clearly are attempting to simulate the difficulties and deadliness of samurai life and samurai swords. This is a game where, you know, your character could die from a single sword cut, because if a katana hits you in a nasty way, it's probably not going to, it's going to leave a mark. It's going to probably kill you. Your character could easily die or bleed out. Your character could end up with a lasting scar that it's not like there's a regeneration spell. You just have a scar now. So it's a very, very interesting game. I think it's fantastic. It's beautiful. It's provocative. And I really think it's really great. We at Knights of Last Call started a Legend of the Five Rings campaign like maybe a year and a half ago. We kind of died out because we got busy with the channel becoming more popular, but we've recently restarted a Legend of the Five Rings campaign, and I cannot wait to try to dive into it and get some cool stories out of it. So Legend of the Five Rings is S tier for me, just because it just seems so unique in what it's doing and what it brings. And again, that sort of GNS score. This is the game that made me think that emulation, or E, might be part of the layout of what a game should be sort of designed for, because I was like, well, the G is really high, but the N is really high, but the S is really high. But really what they're doing is combining to create an emulationist, where it's like, somehow it feels like we're playing a game that's made to make us feel like we are playing as samurai. So it's pretty complicated, pretty cool game. I really like it. All right. Marvel Superheroes Basic Set Rulebook. So this is from the 80s, or maybe this is from 1984. This is the 1991 version from the basic box that I got when I was a young teenager. This game is the original sort of Marvel superhero game. It is colloquially known as Face Rip, because of the stats. It is, which is like fighting, agility, strength, endurance, resolve, intellect, and presence, I want to say, is what those are, if I could remember correctly. This is in my opinion, this is the old school game. You roll on a percentage table depending on how powerful, like your stats. I mean, they have numbers, but your stats are like it's not like, oh, I have a strength of 18. No, you have remarkable strength, incredible strength, amazing strength, monstrous strength, unearthly strength, Shift X, Shift Y, Shift Z, class 1,000, class 5,000. You know, it's just crazy. Anyways, you roll percentage dice that helps you determine whether or not you hit or not. I mean, this is, I'm not gonna lie, this is very much sort of like an old school kind of game. It has very little narrative elements to it, but that being said, and it's like, it's got all these rules in here for how far you can move vertically on webs. Like, you could definitely tell what the game was trying to have you do, right? At the time, it was a fantastic introduction to superhero games. But I personally feel like, Mutants and Masterminds or Sentinels of the Multiverse or whatever is going to be a much, much better experience than that you probably would want, or even Champions or Hero. That being said, some of the other Marvel games, which we've covered, the specific Marvel Direct games, have been really, really crappy. But this one is a beloved game set that allowed people to play superheroes as early as like 1984. So I will give it credit for that. But I do have to give Marvel Superheroes just to see. I played it when I was a kid. I thought it was the shit. But I mean, I was, young. I'd only played D&D, and I thought it was so cool that I could be like Thor and just have like this crazy high strength that it felt like cheating, right? But it was fun. So, let's see. Hey, while we're crushing on it, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, guess what? It's Fiendish Codex 1, Hordes of the Abyss. Oh, not enough for devils? Well, here, the first book was about demons. I could open up this book, but I'm going to tell you, it's exactly what we saw before. I'm going to give this book a D, just like those other books. It's got a ton of information about demons, about hell, or about the abyss, I should say, and monsters, feats, magic items, prestige classes, the whole 9 yards. But useless, in my opinion, if you're not interested in that or using that. These type of books are very hard to just, hey, we're just going to plug that into the campaign for a little bit. On the other hand, if you end up going in that direction for your campaign, either deliberately from the beginning, that was your plan, or maybe mid-levels, the players are taking certain actions, you're being a very cool GM who's allowing the campaign to sort of expand in a natural way, and the players seem to be sort of getting swept up into this demonic invasion, and the portals to the abyss are opening all over the world, then you maybe say, okay, this book is going to kind of come in for levels 10 through 20. It's going to be still a little bit more, old school. It's going to be a little bit more present. And suddenly, now that the players are dealing with these demonic forces, some of these new spells and new magical items and new prestige classes make their way into the game. So, D for Hordes of the Abyss, but the premise is cool and I like the layout. So, Kendall, do you think the distinction between devils and demons is necessary? No. I mean, they did it because of alignment. Fundamentally from for me, from a villain standpoint, I like the distinction because for me, the difference between the lawful evil character and the chaotic evil character is sizable. And I think that, not a lot of people play that up enough. Devils are just another thing that you have to fight, and demons are just another thing that you have to fight. But they really should feel different, and they should definitely have different motivations. If anything, demons are a little bit, oversimplified because they are just wanton beings of destruction and death, whereas devils have a lot more interest, I think, and nuance. And so I personally think that is. But the way that most people use them, it's just, it's an evil devil demon. The way that, like at least in Judeo-Christian mythos, the two terms devil and demon are kind of used interchangeably. Let's see. Isaiah says, I'm tempted to look at older editions. Yeah, I am familiar with older editions. Roll and Keep, D10, Isaiah. I I don't really like it, to be honest with you. I bounced off of it several times. I didn't really play first edition Legend of the Five Rings. I wasn't aware of it. But in second edition, Legend of the Five Rings came out for D20, and the source books were half D20, half D10 roll and keep. And so I was interested in that rule set because I wanted to see what all these books were about. And I was kind of like, I don't really like this set rules. And I think I checked out fourth edition, maybe, or third edition. The edition was like, it's like a black cover with just a single katana on it, I think is what the cover art was. And again, didn't really find anything to really like there. So that was either third or fourth edition was the other one that I looked at. And again, just, I think the world is really interesting, but I just didn't think that the mechanics there were really great there. So, well, London, and so this is, you actually are identifying the worst part of it. It's bad enough that there's devils and demons, but then they start including like daemons, and then they start including, all these other crazy creatures that, oh, you occupy the chaotic neutral evil section of the alignment wheel. Oh, you occupy the neutral lawful double chaotic neutral evil section of the wheel. So you need that needs its own special evil denizens, and they have to have something that they do that's special. And then it's like, oh, no, they can't corrupt. That's a demon. That's not a daemon, which is different from a, whatever. And I hate that on both sides of the equation. So completely. Kendall, it was a little bit of third edition nonsense, but Paizo really leaned, in my opinion, hard into having like a million different types of outsiders, each with a very, very specific, sort of role to fill, I guess, in the universe. Derek hates something. What a shock. Thanks, Steven. Appreciate you. We're just hanging out here. All, there's only about 20, 25 of us. Like I said, this stream has, I think it's run its course. I think people are pretty, pretty tired of, of this series. So this probably is going to be the last all books ranked. So just saying. And we're going to go back. Well, maybe we'll do live stream. Pathfinder 2, all feats ranked. And we'll get 100 viewers in here. But we got to do something. All right, next up. Hey, why not? Pathfinder, second edition, core rulebook. Well, technically F tier, right? Because this is a fossil now, unusable, because Pathfinder 2 core is coming out. Plus, this thing is loaded with OGL references that just make the game completely unplayable. I mean, look, if you're on this channel, you probably know what Pathfinder 2nd Edition is. Look, it's a great game. I think they went a little too far in trying to mechanicize everything. They did that in a way to maximally... they did it in a way to sort of minimize, I should say, ambiguity. And they tried to, I think, create a game system that would require the GM to make as few rule decisions and rulings as possible, and which is why everything is tightly screwed down, aka the math is tight. That is great. It is also not great. I think that elements of this game, because it is so balanced, I think some elements of that make it difficult to GM in a particular style. I think like throwing encounters at your party that are really above them or really below them is very problematic in Pathfinder. Giving your character a bonus or a numerical bonus could literally break the game. Just throwing a character a +1 or a +2 bonus to hit is an unbelievably huge value. It also, because the math is so tight, it means that when you do find a spell or feat or ability which gives you a sizable bonus, then it almost becomes, too powerful, which is why spells like synesthesia or fear or using aid or true strike have, in my opinion, a overweighted influence on the game because the math is so tight. The game is very sensitive to shifts in your numerical bonus. When you throw a high level heroism spell on a character with a high level aid, or when I say high level, I mean like 13th level on a character, and suddenly they're with a +6 or +7 to hit, and then the creature is flanked and you've thrown a synesthesia on it, so it's clumsy -3. You're talking about essentially giving your character +12 to hit. That is a lot. I mean, that's a lot in any game, but in Pathfinder 2, it's a crazy amount. And so it kind of makes you go like, well, why do we have all this really balanced math if we can just kind of go ahead and do this anyways? And so, again, there are pros and cons to it, but I still think Pathfinder is a really great game, and I give it a solid A. It is, it's a great game. You need Smith to go on stream and talk about his Pathfinder 2 reservations. Well, the other thing that's weird about Pathfinder 2 is we see this all the time, by the way, is the game. Like, one thing that I was just pointing out to people is that according to the rules of the game on page 304 of your core rulebook on targeting under spells. Now, remember, this is different. This is the spells section. We are in the magic. Well, we're in chapter 7 spells. This is the magic targeting section. It says here, some spells allow you to directly target a creature, an object, or something that is a more specific category. So like a haste spell or magic missile, anything that says, target creature. The target must be within the spell's range, okay? And you must be able to see it or otherwise perceive it with a precise sense. By default, most humanoids only have precise sight. So this is saying the target must be within the spell's range, and you must be able to see it or otherwise perceive it with a precise sense to target it. So the rule is if a creature is invisible or hidden, you cannot target it with a spell. That's the rule. And they have this rule. And this is a game that has a lot of rules. But then under it, there's a sentence that says, at the GM's discretion, you can attempt to target a creature you can't see, as described in Detecting Creatures on page 465 and 467. Now, if you know the rules of the game, you know that the rules on page 465, 467 are where it says, if you want to target a creature you can't see, you have to make a flat check DC 11. But here's the thing that's interesting about it. There's a rule, and then immediately there's a rule that says, but this is one that if you want to, you can ignore. But it says at the GM's discretion, you could use a different rule. But isn't that always true? Or is Pathfinder saying it's only true in this instance? In any other instance, it doesn't matter what the GM's discretion is. But now they're giving us permission to change the rule? But if they're like, oh no, you're saying use that other rule. Well, then why did they write this rule? This is where the rules ambiguity of Pathfinder 2 can drive me insane. Now, obviously, as a experienced dungeon master, I am totally fine making that call. But I feel like this could potentially be very, very confusing and problematic for a lot of game masters. Anyways, Pathfinder gets an A. It's a good game. Let's see here. Oh, we got something from Roll for Combat. It's because 20 people wrote that book and it's hard to keep them all in check. Maybe relax about something like that. Because there's elements of that all over the place. It's very, that language is to me very, very weird. It's all why call out that is an instance where the GM's discretion can be change the rule? Does that, that's why they need yes, I agree. That is why they need remastered. I am pro remastered. Derek is I want to buy new rule books. I want them to clean up ambiguities. I want them to fix things that aren't working. And I'd love for them to be, clear about what they're going to be clear about. Because if I'm going to play a game that is going to have that many rules, it's like, okay, I want it to be, I want it to be airtight. And I don't expect people to get it right the first time. We've had 3.5 years of aggressive playtesting with tens and tens of thousands of players playing hundreds of thousands of hours. Yeah, we know more about the game. We know how to make it better. So, yeah. All right. 4th edition, Manual of the Planes. You know what? I never got a chance to use this one. But it was cool because it's a 4th edition book. So it was chock full of information about not just like, oh, here's random information about the planes. Nope. It's like, here's how you can use the planes to do adventures in them. It wasn't just like buying a book from the Barnes and Noble about a country and then you learn about Italy. No, if you buy a tour guide book to Italy, it's not just an atlas of shit that's in Italy. It's a book about here's how you can explore Italy. Here's how to travel in Italy. 4th edition books are designed that way. 4th edition says, here is how you can use the planes to tell different types of adventures and different types of stories. Jade, $10 super chat. Thank you. It's your first super chat, Jade. Thank you. That's awesome. Appreciate you. That's very, very nice of you. Let's see. They said, they said, sorry about that. One of the characters in on the characters in unfitting campaigns topic. I've noticed that going back to what I was talking about earlier about like someone being like the Devil Binder prestige class or the Devil Binder archetype, and you're not playing a devil focused campaign. On the characters in unfitting campaign topic, I've noticed that players who prefer to play the most out there races still have their sentient slime character act like any other human being. Oh, Jade, I don't know how much of a fan of you are of this channel, but the truth of that drives me insane as well. I actually think that, you know, even to my experience, I think it's actually really hard to even play a character like an elf. Someone who lives for hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. How can you even properly put that into context? One of the reasons I default to playing characters that are, you know, races that are pretty much just like humans is because at the very least, I have a sense for how this character would be thinking and feeling. For so many people, Jade, ancestries and races, it's just a costume. It is skin deep. It's just something to be funny and quirky and unique. It has nothing to do with actually playing that race or that ancestry. And it drives me bonkers. So I completely agree with you on that. Now, there are people out there, I'm sure, who can really lean into that. But I think it's very hard to do. I think it's very hard to do properly. I will be honest with you. I default to a lot of times to playing humans because I know how to play a human. And when I'm an elf, I mean, it's hard for me not to just be like, why am I even on this adventure? I live for millennia. I should just go home. Or even being a level 1, like, wait a second, hold on a second. My elf character is starting at age 150 and I'm only level 1? Like, elves mature at the same rate as humans. Like, it's not like they're babies at age 27. It's like, what have I been doing my whole life? You know? And GM Scott, I don't think you're wrong. I think that's why a lot of people do default to sort of these stereotypical approaches. But at the very least, it's because it gives that ancestry or that race a feeling of consistency and a feeling that they aren't human. You shouldn't play them like human. They aren't just humans in a little body or humans in a stocky body or humans in a lithe body. They are a different species, not just a different culture, although they are a different culture, but they are a different species. And I did think that Pathfinder 2, one of the changes I liked the most is having ancestry and heritage be two separate things. I actually really like that change a lot. I mean, I think that's awesome. In fact, I don't even think we need the background element of Pathfinder 2, the background choice at all. But I think ancestry and heritage was a great idea. So yeah. Anyways, Manual of Planes was really cool. It talked about the outer planes, the astral sea. It talked about the elemental chaos. It talked about the Feywild. It talked about the Shadowfell. And it gave you all these really cool adventure locations. Like, instead of just being like, here's a map of the Feywild, it's like, okay, you want to go to the Feywild, the mystical realm of Fey on the other side of the ethereal plane? Okay, well, guess what? Here are some cool adventure ideas. Here are some cool adventure sites with information about how you would use this to make a really cool adventure out on the Feywild. Same thing with the Shadowfell. And, you know, it's a really cool idea. Again, it's, in my opinion, it's a campaign module. 4th edition just did it a little bit cleaner because their focus was on creating a product that is designed for the game master to be able to plug this and play this into their campaign. So Manual of Planes gets a C+ from me because I think it is actually pretty sweet. Oh, GM Scott.
GM Scott tipped $25. Got to take this opportunity to take out London. Snicker snack. Also, leaving to hang with the wife for a while. I'll catch the rest on the VOD.
GM Scott, thank you for the tip. Thank you for taking out London. He was down to a single hit point, so you have maximized your tip in order to get the maximum amount of hit points for the hype boss. And I appreciate you stopping by. I'm glad we got to talk about 13th Age. Definitely excited to play some games, GM Scott, in a couple weeks here at Origins with you. And definitely get a boss, or definitely get a beer. So thank you, GM Scott. Yeah, London, you were the hype boss for a little bit there. Well, London, because you tipped and we didn't have anybody else take you out. Yeah, a beer boss. We'll do something like that. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Exactly. We're already drunk. All right. This just came out. It was not good. This is a 5th edition D&D. Their attempt to create Dragonlance, which I don't know why they brought back. Somehow they were like, let's throw everything that we can about Dragonlance onto one cover. Although I do think the cover is kind of sweet. You have Lord Soth in the background there. You have some Draconians in the foreground. I love Dragonlance, but I don't know why they decided to bring this back to 5th edition at the time that they did. I will say I do love the way that 5th edition books are presented. I love the flat, glossy cover, and then I love this matte finish right here. But yeah, I flipped through this book. It's like weird. It's like trying to be a Dragonlance campaign guide, and then, but it's not really good at that. And then it's like a short adventure that is trying to be this like epic campaign. Did you just say Soth? I said Lord Soth? Lord Soth? I think I said Lord Soth. I think that's how I've always pronounced it. I don't know if I pronounce it Soth or Soth. I mostly read it. You know, I don't think I really ever pronounce it, but I would say one of those two. Anyways, it was a disappointing book. The adventure was clumsily written. I feel like they tried to just jam an entire world into like 20 pages of the book and say that satisfies as a campaign guide. I don't understand what the point of this book was. I think it was a failure. So Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, it gets an F for me. It just felt weird, and yeah, it didn't work for me. Why isn't the title centered? I don't know. That's a great question. George, hello, Knights. How you doing? George, we're doing well. We're hanging out. We don't have a lot of people tonight, George. That's okay though. We're having fun. We're getting a couple tips. We're getting some fun. We're having some chats about all the different stuff. And but yeah, we're having a pretty chill stream tonight. The book streams have kind of come down a little bit in popularity, but that's okay. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, Kendall, it was obviously to cash in on, but see, the thing, Kendall, is like cashing in on a recognizable name. It's like, when was the last time Dragonlance was a household name? These new player, like these people, like, was it attempted? What, like, are they trying to get like 40-year-olds to buy D&D books? Is that what they were trying to do with that? Because I don't think younger people even know what Dragonlance is. Dragonlance novels haven't been a thing. Reading hasn't been a thing in 20 years. Jamming too much into short books is par for the course for 5e campaign books. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll believe you, Zach. I'm sure you have a lot more experience with 5e than I do. You know what? You know what? Hoyret, you are 100% correct. It did work on me. I was like, well, it says Dragonlance. I guess I'll buy it. I mean, I'll take a look at it. I do love Dragonlance. So, Hoyret, well done. George, I started I started the stream with 13th Age book. I started the stream with the 13th Age book. So if you want, you can go back quickly to the probably around the 10-minute mark, and you can watch us talk about 13th Age for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then you can hop back. So we did talk about 13th Age. All right. George, who helps me do the writing for this, to link everything, might kill me, but I'm going to do 3 at once here. This is 4th edition. This is Adventurer's Vault. This is Adventurer's Vault 2. And this is Mordenkaisen's Magnificent Emporium. These were the 3 treasure books that they came out with for 4th edition D&D. These 2 came out as part of the initial release. This came out probably after the first 6 or 7 months, 8 months. This came out the following year. Mordenkaisen's Magnificent Emporium is technically part of like the end of the product line when they were doing like essentials, even though it doesn't have the form factor of an essentials book. It kind of came out during that essentials era. These were really fun. These were great books. There was really interesting treasure in them. It is obviously splat, but originally when 4th edition came out, I will be the first to admit it did not have enough magic items in it. Magic items in 4th edition were in the, magic items were in the player's handbook. There weren't a ton of them, but I always liked the magical items in 4th edition because I liked the idea that in 4th edition, the wizard's wand or the staff was just like a warrior's sword or a ranger's bow. So, you could have a +4 wand. You could have if you're a warlock, you could have the master's wand of Phantom Bolt. You could have, the Hawthorn wand, and you can see it, there's a +2 wand, a +3 wand, a +4 wand. Of course, 4th edition goes to 30th level, so there's a +5 wand and a +6 wand. But, wizards and warlocks and stuff like that just attacked with their wand. Their spells used attack rolls just like everything else in the game. So wands weren't like this separate weird thing that charged up a bunch of charges and shot it. It's like, no, your wand was like a cool, I have a +4 flame wreath wand, the same way that like a fighter might have a +4 flame tongue sword. So I thought that was really, really cool. And this just filled up a bunch of stuff and added a bunch of stuff. The second one, Adventurer's Vault 2, added item sets, which I'll be honest with you, we never really used, but I thought the idea was cool. It's, again, very, very MMO-ish. I will be the first to admit that. But the idea that there's like a set of items, like this is called the Aleheart Companion's Gear. There are 4 pieces to this gear: the Armor of Dwarven Vigor, the Rousing Hammer, the Hammer Shield, and the Clear Blood Baldric. And here are the 4 items. But if you have 2 of the pieces equipped, you get this bonus. And if you have all 4 pieces equipped, you get an additional bonus. So it's kind of like a cool little mini thing to try to get all the items in the gear set. I thought that was pretty cool. These were really cool. I always enjoyed looking through them as a dungeon master. I always enjoyed giving them out to my players. My players enjoyed getting them. I thought the magic item design in 4th edition was really, really fun and interesting. Every magical item had a cool, a static bonus, like a passive bonus. Oh, this gives you a bonus to your dungeoneering score. This gives you a bonus to your arcana check. But it also had like a power or an ability. This is something that I think Pathfinder 2 very wisely and smartly borrowed, and you don't really see too many things in Pathfinder 2 that are just a flat bonus to something. Usually it gives you some sort of bonus, and then it has some sort of power that you can use once a day or once an hour, and I really, really like that design. 4th edition did it first, and Pathfinder 2 continued to improve on that, so I really liked it. So for all 3 of these, Adventurer's Vault 2, and Mordenkaisen's Magnificent Emporium, I'm going to give these Bs, because despite being just books of magical items, they're really good. And there's actually some really cool, interesting, fun, awesome ideas in there. So I also loved that all of the DM books in 4th edition all had this kind of blue color and their binding. So when you put things onto the bookshelf, all your DM books would have this blue binding. All the monster books have a green binding, and all of the players' books have sort of a... No, I said that wrong. Players' books have a blue binding. My bad. Players' books, because magical items in 4th edition were kind of in the player's control. Players' books have DM's books have a red binding. It's kind of cool. Let's see. Kendall says, did young people even know what that was about Spelljammer? No, Kendall, the Spelljammer also thing was apparently horrible as well, so I didn't even buy that one. They're bringing back a lot of campaign settings. I think Planescape is next. Is it a trademark thing? I have no idea. Like, do they have to do it or they lose the trademark? That's a great question, actually. I part of it might just be like a way to be like, see, look, we're celebrating everybody. And it's also just a great way because you can just kind of go back and use your old material and just kind of rehash it and update it to 5th edition, and boom, you got a new book. So maybe that's why it's just easy to do. George misses Bloodied Condition. I miss Bloodied as well. I think it's really cool. Do you think Pathfinder 2nd edition would have been improved had they used the 4E philosophy for magic users? Yes. Yes. I'm not saying that, look, there are campaigns and there are systems where I think Vancian casting and, having spell slots and resources makes a lot of sense. I don't think Pathfinder 2 is one of those games. I think Pathfinder 2 would have been much better served if spell casting was done radically different. But I don't think that they could have made that much of a change from Pathfinder 1 to 2. 4th edition did when they went from 3 to 4, and it bit them in the ass hard. And I'm sure Pathfinder 2nd, I'm sure the smart folks at Paizo said, look, we're going to do what we can to make spellcasters less reliant on the sort of slot-based resource system, and we're going to try to give them more exciting active options with auto-scaling cantrips, auto-scaling focus spells that are just renewable and usable again and again, and get the characters making, rolling a dice rolls. But they couldn't fully divorce themselves from that sacred cow, I think, without pissing off their user base. So, yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. All right. I'm going to make things awkward and painful again. We're going to cover a couple more 4th edition books. It's Arcane Power, Divine Power, Primal Power, and I think we already did Martial Power, so this is Martial Power 2. Believe it or not, they only did a second one for Martial Power. They never did get a second one for Primal, Arcane, or Divine. So the only thing that got 2 was martial characters. Couple information about 4th edition, for those of you who don't know. In 4th edition, every class in the game belonged to what was called a power source. So, for example, fighters, rangers, rogues, and warlords all derived their power from the martial power source, which is to say that their characters, relied on their martial training and skill. Whereas barbarians, druids, shamans, and wardens all drew their power from the primal power source. Avengers, clerics, invokers, and paladins drew from the divine source. And of course, bards, sorcerers, sword mages, warlocks, and wizards came from the arcane. And one of the cool things about that is this bard and the sorcerer and the sword mage and the warlock and the wizard are all very different classes. The warlock is a striker that specializes in doing a lot of damage. The sorcerer is also a striker specializing in doing a lot of damage. But the wizard is a controller. The wizard doesn't do a lot of damage. The wizard is really good at putting debuffs onto enemies and creating walls and weird teleportations and illusion stuff. They're not a damage class. If you want to be an arcane character that blasts shit to pieces, you be a sorcerer or you can be a warlock. The wizard is trying to do something different with the arcane power source. The sword mage is a defender, sort of a tank, if you will. And the bard is actually a leader. The bard in 4th edition is actually a healer. and a support class, which makes a lot of sense. It's a bard. But the cool thing about it is, despite the fact that you have strikers and controllers and defenders and leaders, they all have some common themes or feel to them because they are arcane power. Like, one thing that you will see in these other books is that if your character is divine or primal or martial, you are probably not going to see too many AoEs unless you are specifically like a controller, which is a character role that really specializes at doing AoEs. But a lot of the arcane classes do have area of effect spells because that's just something that, arcane is good at. Similarly, divine power, the Avenger is a divine striker. The Invoker is a divine controller. And the Paladin is a divine defender. But all of these classes have some ability to heal. Even though normally the only role that can heal is the leader role, which is what the cleric is, a leader role. The fact is, because they're tied to the divine power, Avengers, Invokers, and Paladins, which are strikers, controllers, and defenders, all kind of have that similar vibe for divine, which is, there's a little bit of healing there. There's a little bit of buffing there because that's what the divine character class does. So that's what makes, I think, 4th edition roles and responsibility things very interesting. These are all splat books. They just basically contain a list, a bunch of new powers at all the different levels for your different character classes. And that way, every time you level up in 4th edition, it's like you have a list of 12 to 13 different powers, and you pick one of them, and you can retrain them and all that other stuff. And here's a bunch of new ones for the barbarian, and then here's a bunch of new ones for the shaman, and here's a bunch of new ones. So they're splat books. Some of them were better than others, but overall, I think they did a very good job with these, and I am going to give them a B because I think that they did a great job at giving you unique options, really expanding the game. And while they did make 2 martial powers, for the most part, you had the core book that the class was introduced in, like Player's Handbook 1, Player's Handbook 2, or Player's Handbook 3. And then you had the power book, which gave you the sort of expansion options. So with 2 books, you pretty much had the entire class on lockdown. All right. How's everybody doing? It's pretty quiet. Viewers have dropped even further. Our goal tonight was to have chat vote. I was going to do a poll or get some ideas from chat, and then we were going to throw it in a poll about what our next RPG deep dive could be in. But, again, we are going to be bringing back actual plays soon, and that's going to start, taking up some of our stream slots. And so we got to make sure that we really focus on what, you, the audience, want to see. So if you're a patron, and maybe you missed yesterday's Patreon live stream, our Zoom call, it's up on the Patreon website. Go check it out. At least watch the first part of it where we cover the survey results, because I really want to hear from you. And if you're a loyal viewer of this channel, you're not a member of our Patreon, that's okay. I still want to hear from you. Leave a comment. Leave a comment on this video or another video. I typically try to get to most of our comments. We're not big enough that I can't not get to everybody's comments, because I would like to hear what's the content that you all want to see, because that's really what drives this channel. Is we don't have a lot of viewers, but the ones that we do have been very loyal and very awesome to us, and then we really, really appreciate that. Edward, yes, Root is coming. That is the next game that we're going to be playing, but potentially others as well. Maybe even at the same time, we might be doing Root and something else. Yeah, viewer engagement, not top tier tonight. That's okay. It's May. It's cold out. It's like snowing and cold here, but maybe it's starting to get nice and people don't want to spend their Tuesdays. That's all right. I think I said, Isaiah, one of the problems with doing any sort of series is by the time you get 5 or 6 or 7 in, people do not want to click on it. We've never been one to use clickbait topics. We've done a few here and there, I will admit, but mostly it's sort of like a troll or a meme. But yeah, it's pretty tough. All right, now what else do I have over here? I have so many books still. Gods and Magic, Lost Omens, Pathfinder. This book had some of the worst spells that we ever rated in the entire channel. Obviously, they're very, very super flavorful, but very, very, very weak and not very useful. It's weird that they put Gods and Magic together. This is an example of a Lost Omens book that I'm not a huge fan of. I think Golarion has so many deities, and I have no idea why. It has so many deities. It's crazy how many deities Golarion has. I don't know why we need so many freaking gods and goddesses. But apparently we do. Gods and Magic, D. This book, though, this book was the shit. This is a great book from Pathfinder First Edition. This book was great. Solid atlas, great map. I love the format, talking about the races, history of Golarion, Inner Sea region. I love this style here. This is very Eberron-esque. The style of doing like the map and then bringing in the highlighting detail of the city. I thought this Inner Sea guidebook was incredible. This was a really, 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 really awesome atlas and gazetteer. Hey, Jade with another $5 super chat says, for a year, watching the VODs has helped me get through my overnight job. Oh, that's sick. What do you do, Jade? And you helped open my eyes to systems beyond the traditional D20. Well, you know us, like that is by far, I think, the highest praise that you could give to us, because that is definitely something that I take a certain amount of pride in. I think it's great if people like D20, and if you and your group are playing a game that you all enjoy, I say keep at it, love it. But I do think that there's a lot of groups out there that really could benefit from playing other games and maybe enjoy their experience a little bit more. Maybe there's some frustration or irritation with the game system because you just don't know what else is available out there. So what I'm trying to do with this channel is just introduce people to these ideas. Maybe it's something grabs your attention, you bring it back to your group, you play it, and you say, no, that wasn't it. That we really want to go back to D20. At the same time, maybe you find something that you go, this is incredible. This was what we were looking for the whole time. And I mean, that is what I really, I really love it. So thank you for that support. Work overnight at a grocery store chain in Texas, H-E-B. Well, I don't know H-E-B, but that does sound like a long night. All the grocery stores around here in Ohio, we had like a couple chains, like Giant Eagle was the one that we had up here that was open 24 hours. But now, ever since COVID, they close at like 11 and they don't reopen until the next morning. So kind of sucks. HEB is S tier, according to Enders. Negative 411, a member of the Adventurer, as they are a supporter of our YouTube channel. Thank you, Negative. I liked your GMing advice videos. Some of the discussions with the group were very entertaining. Yeah, I mean, our recent Patreon survey showed that over 80% of our patrons said that they either, very, very much liked or exceptionally liked the GM advice videos. So, that's always been a big part for us. And I definitely want to keep producing those and finding ways to make more and more of those. So, especially once we get into our studio live stream studio setup, and we can have kind of conversations with some of my fellow players, some of my friends, some of our viewers, some of our patrons. I think it'll be really, really interesting. Orpheus, I picked up Microscope because of a KOLC recommendation from my groups. Already had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, Microscope's a really fun game. I love bringing it to cons and just like little, kind of informal gatherings and just being like, hey, I've got some, Sharpies and some 3x5 note cards. Let's play a game of Microscope. And you end up having a really fun time with it. I think it's really great. Zach says, KOLC has opened my eyes to what's out there and helped me want to take the risk on trying them. Yeah, Zach, that's awesome. I mean, I certainly really love to hear that. But I'll be honest with you. We have a lot of our patrons who've joined our Patreon. They're part of our Discord. They love chatting with the group. They're meeting all these people, and they come back. They say, yeah, I can't wait to try all this, but my group just still only wants to play 5th edition D&D, or my group only still wants to play Pathfinder 2nd edition. And look, these have been my friends for, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I'm not going to just go abandon them or, force them to change. But we have had some people who have started to make some inroads and said, hey, look, let's try out a new game. Okay. We've been playing the same game for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. Let's try a new game. And in a lot of cases, I would say in the vast majority of cases, people have really been surprised at how much better they have enjoyed their role-playing game experience because of playing a different game system. Again, I'm not saying that there is a problem with your D20 system game. I'm simply saying that there might be one out there that's better for you and your group. All right. Next, we have Spire, The City Must Fall. I'm not even going to lie. I haven't read this book yet because I bought it, and then I was going to do a first look on it, which is first look are where I get a copy of a game, I get the PDF of it, I open it up for the first time, and I look at it with you, our viewers, and we kind of go through the book together, and we kind of learn it together, and you can kind of get my first reaction to it and sort of see how I evaluate games that I'm reading through. Because this game led into its kind of follow-up, which is called Heart, The City Beneath. And this, a patron really wanted to see a first look of. And so I have deliberately not read these books just so that I can do a first look on them. But we're getting towards the bottom of my pile here. So these were kind of, not really on my shelf yet. But so I don't know yet about these games. So no ranking for Spire or Heart, but I am interested to do the first look on these when we get to it. Let's see here. Spire, The City Must Fall. Spire is a fantasy punk role-playing game of intrigue, subterfuge, and sedition. You and your friends will become a cell of desperate drow freedom fighters and claw back control of the city from your Aelfir overlords, no matter what it takes. It uses a simple rule system that helps you to tell stories of brutal rebellion where life is cheap, alliances are temporary, and magic is strange and perilous. If this is the last one of these, any recommendations for a modern day system? Zach, I guess it depends on what you mean by modern day. Do you mean like set like in the 20th century? Or do you mean like, you know what I mean? So maybe you can provide some context there. Colin says, Spire feels like one of those indie games that is sexy as fuck, but I will struggle to get on the table without knowing how many games I want to run. Colin, I think you exactly nailed how I feel as well. So, I mean, I'm absolute believer in that as well. Well, Zach, I mean, generic games like Fate tend to map really well to current modern day games because you can kind of, use them to that respect. There's also a G.I. Joe game, which has come out, which uses some Essence. I don't remember what it's called. The Essence system that a couple of our patrons have said are really, really good. And that might be, checking out. You're thinking of like Bourne or Mission Impossible. Well, I see. So you want something like... See, when I think Bourne or Mission Impossible, I cannot help but think like... I mean, it's old school, but, there's Spycraft, which is an older game. It's from D20, but it is an older game. But Spycraft was a game basically designed to be like secret agent type stuff. So, I mean, that's definitely a game that was literally designed just for that. So I will certainly recommend that one, even if it is a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? A bit out of place. There is there's Delta Green, which is like Call of Cthulhu, X-Files, but like in a modern day sense. So there's kind of that one. Night's Black's agents is secret agents, but Night's Black agents are vampires, but they're like vampire secret agents. That's kind of cool. It's I don't know. I would say that modern day, you probably want to, most modern day systems tend to be pretty generic systems like Fate or Savage Worlds. There isn't, there isn't really as many straight up modern day TTRPGs that I can really think of that have really stood out. But like, yeah, Delta Green has probably some elements there. Again, you could kind of, especially if you want to put a little bit of a weird, kind of X-Files edge to it, but there's a lot of like urban fantasy games, like Dresden Files, Vampire, Urban Shadows, but they all have that sort of urban fantasy kind of, fantasy punk vibe to it. There's also actually Green Ronin produces a series of books called the Age books, AGE. And they originally released it from like a game called Dragon Age, which was an RPG based off of the computer game Dragon Age. But they took that Dragon Age game and they turned it into sort of a generic system they call the Age system. And I think they have a fantasy age, but I also think they have a modern age source book. So, and the Age system is really cool and has a lot of really neat options for doing kind of like cool stunts and cool, like almost special effects that you might see in something like a Mission Impossible movie. So maybe check out Modern Age. But yeah, there's usually a lot of them. Orpheus is kind of right. A lot of them have a supernatural twist. I think historically, just straight up modern RPGs have never really performed that well. Yeah. All right. Another one is a little bit weird, Jazak, but there used to be an RPG that was based off of the Cortex system, which is not my favorite system. And there's a new version of Cortex out called Cortex Prime. But if you go back to the old versions of Cortex, there was a game called Leverage, which was based off of the TV show Leverage, which is kind of like an Ocean's 11 style. So maybe not quite Bourne, but maybe a little bit more Mission Impossible, Ocean's 11, crew of professionals trying to, sneak in and, avoid the lasers and avoid setting off the security system. So that would be kind of like that, Fiasco is the Ocean's 11's game. Well, number one, I actually disagree with you there, Colin, because Fiasco is definitely inspired by like Coen Brothers movies. Like Ocean's 11, it doesn't have the sort of comeuppance. Like the Ocean's 11 characters are likable and you want them to win. Typically in Fiasco, the idea is that all of you are terrible, horrible people, and you kind of want to see everybody kind of get their comeuppance, and everybody's a shitty person, and like nobody is really the good guy, so to speak, in Fiasco, which is part of the reason why I like it. So I do think that's a little bit different. I wouldn't call Fiasco the Ocean's 11 game, but Blades in the Dark is a very good version of Ocean's 11 game as well. Although again, in Blades in the Dark, they are kind of, the idea is that you're kind of, criminal. Oh, you just described how I feel about Ocean's 11's movies. All right, fair enough. All right, well, but to me, I mean, the characters are a little bit likable and more reasonable. All right, well, I got a bunch more books back here, Random Adventures, 4th edition books, 3rd edition books, but I think we've come as far as we're going to come. Unless anybody has any specific thoughts or comments or questions, we can hop back over to it. But, I will say that, overall, I think it's been a fun little journey through my book collection. I think we got through about half of my books. The truth of the matter is that a lot of my book collections, are just, 4th edition splat books. Third edition splat book. Oh, it's the complete Psionic. Oh, it's the complete Arcane. For Pathfinder 2nd edition. Oh, it's Guns and Gears. Here's Secrets of Magic from Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Oh, here's that Martial Power book that we were talking about earlier. Here's a source book from 4th edition for Undead called The Open Grave. So again, I mean, there's a lot of addendums to the core systems. I don't think we actually ever covered this. So this is Vampire the Masquerade from the Old World of Darkness. I have kind of an interesting connection to this game. I made fun of this game for a long time. I was young when this game came out. I was probably 12 or something. And I remember seeing what I thought, where the goth weirdos start wanting to be vampires. And at the time, I thought that is completely absurd. Why would you ever want to be a vampire? Vampires are the bad guys. You want to kill the vampires. And there was a lot of baggage with this game. But in high school, one of my friends got really into Interview with the Vampire and the movie and Lestat, and he thought vampires were really cool. And he ran a vampire game, which, to be fair, me and my friends kind of ruined because we kind of acted like assholes. But I will admit that the game system for Vampire is actually, of the World of Darkness, is actually pretty good. It's a very simple system. The D10 system, it uses a very basic system of taking, quote unquote, dots in different powers or abilities. And the number of dots you have is how many dice you roll, how many D10s you roll. It's a dice pool. And I could be remembering it a little bit differently or a little bit incorrectly, but the GM sets a difficulty number and you need to roll those on your D10s, and the number that you roll determines how powerful you are. But, I always thought this was an interesting concept of the game. My real introductions to Vampire the Masquerade was they originally created a TCG back in the 90s called Jihad, which they got in trouble for, and they ended up changing the name of the collectible card game. But I did play a lot of Jihad, so I knew all like the vampire clans, and I knew all the different sort of lore of the world because I had played the card game. The same thing was true with Werewolf the Apocalypse, because I had played Rage, which was the card game based around Werewolf the Apocalypse. And this was a book I picked up many years later from Half Price Books. I didn't actually own this during the heyday. But I thought Werewolf the Apocalypse was a little bit more interesting because at least they felt a little bit more like the good guys. But again, I do think that these games really did revolutionize and change things. And, I would say like if you put me in a time machine and sent me back to 1995, would I be more likely to play AD&D 2nd edition, or would I be more likely to play Vampire or Werewolf or Mage? Derek of today, I would probably be more likely to play Vampire, Werewolf, or Mage, because I just think that those kind of mature stories and the mechanics designed to sort of promote them are more compelling to me. So I think these games were very, very important to our hobby, and I think that they really showed a completely different side to what role-playing games were and are. And, I got to give them credit for that. So I'm going to give them, B pluses from my personal ranking, just because I think that they're so important. And even though I never really played Vampire and I never even got a chance to play Werewolf, they still have a place on my shelf because I think that they're an important part of sort of gaming history and sort of our collective lexicon for understanding the evolution of this hobby. Hoyrit says, the closest I ever got to playing Vampire was making a character and then the GM bailed. Yeah. We made characters that were all like superhuman fast with superhuman speed, and they all were having 9mm guns and katanas and swords. And, the Matrix had come out in 99. So we were all wearing trench coats, like in the game, not in real life. We never went that far, but like, we were all like too cool for school, Blade had come out, the original Blade with Wesley Snipes. So like that was really like, we're like, that's what a vampire game meant to us. It meant like being a badass with a sword. I cannot say anything about the new World of Darkness or the new World of the Chronicle system. I actually don't know anything about it. Although one of my patrons is always trying to get me to talk about it. Oh, here is a game that I definitely want to get onto the table someday. This is 7th Sea. This is by John Wick. This is the 2nd edition of 7th Sea. And 7th Sea is a high storytelling, high fantasy, pulpy world that's kind of like a similar shadow to our own. It has very similar layouts geographically to sort of Europe and the Mediterranean. And your characters are sort of, ne'er-do-wells or sort of heroes in this realm of high adventure and swashbuckling and intrigue in the land of Thea. It is a really awesome and innovative system for tracking your character's wounds. As your character becomes more hurt, they become more powerful. You get more points, and you can do more stuff with your character. When your character gets taken out, you're not dead unless you think you should be, which I think is really, really cool. It lets you control that. The characters are very simple. The gameplay is very fast and exciting. It has a lot of lore in the book, I will admit that. But the actual mechanics of the game are pretty lightweight because it's designed to be a swashbuckling game. And I don't want my swashbuckling game to take 20 minutes per combat round. I want my swashbuckling game to take 5 minutes per combat round. So, it's a beautiful book. It's well written. It's well designed. John Wick has a certain style of writing in his Game Master sections, which kind of drives me insane. But outside of that, I think this is a very pretty book, and it's a very interesting system. It's one that I definitely want to get onto my table someday. So I give 7C a B. All right, we got time for a couple more. So this is another Ben Robbins game, Follow. So Ben Robbins created Microscope. He created Kingdom. And he created Follow. This is a game about working together or falling apart by Ben Robbins. And the idea of Follow is it's a very short, simple game. It's more of a storytelling game than anything. Basically, in the book, they have examples. They have a bunch of quests, they're called. The bomb, the booty, the candidate, the championship, the heist, the movement, the posse. So the bomb says, a theoretical new weapon could end the war if we can build it and make it work. If we fail, the war drags on, or our work blows us all up, or both. We are the inventors, administrators, and agents on this project. You don't really make a character, per se. It's more like you and your friends get together and sort of collaboratively tell a movie about, in a few short hours, about a secret research project trying to create, the atomic bomb, the Manhattan Project. But they say here at the bottom, you could also be trying to decipher an alien artifact, forge the magic sword, unlock the rune of power, awaken a god, harness telepathy or superpowers. Instead of a mega weapon, it could be mass produced, like a Gatling gun to win the Civil War. It is a very, very simple, easy, basic game where everybody kind of represents, it's a lot of role playing. It's just all mostly role playing. There's no dice rolls. For the most part, you're not randomly determining anything. But as a group, you kind of vote and sort of guide and direct the story. And each of you represents a different faction. You might role play as an individual character, but you might represent the scientists. Another character might represent the generals. Another character might represent the politicians, right? And you're all sort of have an agenda that you're trying to push. And so that will shape and shift the story. Ben Robbins makes these funny little story games. And this one was always kind of fun. I give it a B. Orpheus says, I would love to see a 1 or 2 shot live plays of some of these indie gems. Yeah, Orpheus, in our recent Patreon survey, we asked our patrons how much they would like to see exactly just that. And the response wasn't great, which to say that there were some people who were really excited about it, and there was a lot of people who weren't as excited. But it was enough of a percentage of people who were excited to see it that we will probably throw some of those onto the channel. I don't think we're going to do probably not going to do one a month, but you might see us do a couple of these per year. And, I think that'll be good. Edward, thank you for the super chat. I've really enjoyed this series. I've only ever played or run 5th edition and Pathfinder 2. So seeing what else is out there and hearing all the little chunks about it has been great. Well, Edward, thank you for the support. Thank you for the super chat. I'm very happy that you have benefited from this ongoing series. Edward, if you want to learn about new games and be exposed to all the games that you could ever possibly hope to imagine or learn, I would definitely recommend you check out our Discord, which is part of our Patreon benefit, because we have a lot of people there exploring new games, trying out new games, even running new games in our kind of quiet, closed off community. Again, our Discord is only available if you're a member of our Patreon. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people join specifically for that reason, Edward. They want to see what's out there. So thank you so much for the support. And, hopefully you found something that you're going to try out, that you might pick up. Have I ever played Torg? I actually have not played Torg, George. I've not. Do I have the Genesis RPG? Hoyrit, I do not, actually. I have... Oh, Edward, you just became a patron. Okay, all right. I don't know. I don't always know everybody's real name, Edward. Well, thank you so much for becoming a member of the Patreon. Thank you. You have to excuse me, because I mean, it's weird when I meet people in person, because I'll be like, hey, reverse slalom. And it's like, no, that's not my real name. It's like, oh yeah, you all know my real name, but I don't necessarily know your real name. But Edward, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your support, buddy. I do not have the Genesis RPG. I have only played Genesis through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd Edition, and I think I played a little bit of the Star Wars game at like Gen Con. But I didn't buy the Star Wars game, and then when they came out with the Genesis base system, I just never picked it up. I think the system is interesting. I do think it's a little overly fiddly for my tastes. I like dice pools. I like what the Genesis system is trying to do. I don't know that I love everything that it's trying to do. Yeah, not different Genesis events, Evan. Different Genesis. All right. This is a cool book from 3rd edition, Heroes of Battle. This was a book all about creating characters and running like war campaigns. And it had a whole system in it, which was really, really cool, for running battles. Let me see, find it really quick here. Building adventures, recognition points. Here we go. Victory points. Yeah. So the way it worked is like you had to build an army, and here we go. And it would be like, okay, so you would create a flow chart. Like, okay, here's the coastal raid, and it starts here. The PCs sail in on longships and take mangled layer bombardment. That's an EL4 encounter. Then the party will fight these people in the surf, and if they succeed, they will get 60 victory points. Then they can make decisions about whether they want to go take out the cliffside retreat, or do they want to go occupy a nearby bunker. And each of these things are worth more and more victory points as time runs on. And then there's here's another example of one. And then here's another one where they show, you basically map out, like, here's a battle. Here are the Orcish armies. Here are the human defenders. This is dawn, day 1. And then here is dusk at the end of day 2. The orcs have broken through. The human cavalry has fallen back. And so that sort of tells you, like, if the PCs were to do nothing in this battle, this is what would happen over the next 48 hours, is the orcs would be here, they'd be here, and the humans would be here. And by 48 hours later, the humans will have fallen back, the orcs will have taken the town, crossed the river, and be moving into the other side. Then what you can do is, as the PCs take actions, you kind of can adjust what is going to happen for the battle, because you understand kind of what they're disrupting. And they had this whole system for like getting promotions and medals of honor. It's kind of a cool idea. I give Heroes of Battle a B. It was actually trying to do something kind of cool and different, and I actually really respected that. And we really liked this idea and this concept, and we thought it was a lot of fun. And we never really used it too much, but we did a couple of quote unquote battles, and they were a lot of fun. And it was kind of interesting to like play D&D in like in a war zone. It was kind of cool. All right. Well, the last thing I will end with is Rapanathuk. Rapanathuk has been published, I think, 4 or 5 times, and I own all 4 or 5 copies of it. I own this Pathfinder First Edition version, which is this super thick, heavy tome. But I also own the Rapanathuk Reloaded, which came out before of this. This is a limited edition serialized version of Rapanathuk. I got wow, that is really blown out, huh? I got number 903. I think they only did 1,000 of these. This was from 3.5, and I have the original modules that they produced for Rapanathuk as well. So Rapanathuk is known as the Dungeon of Graves, and it is a dungeon that is legendarily designed to basically be a killer of characters, and it is a mega dungeon of unlike anything else that has ever been seen or done before or since. We have actually played Rapanathuk several times, and some of my favorite gaming stories in our gaming have come from playing in this dungeon. Now, the long-term viability of these campaigns, questionable, because unfortunately, in today's D20 games, character death sucks. It takes a lot of time. Like, I'm talking about hours to build a character. Even if you're building a character quickly, it could take a lot of time to build a character. And, nobody wants to sit there and invest all this time trying to build a character with all these complex feat choices and skill choices and then just die. So unfortunately, the days of sort of like the grinding dungeons and like life is cheap kind of don't really mesh as well, I think, with modern day design, unfortunately. That being said, I feel like I need to share a story with you all of Rapanathuk because it is certainly one of my favorites, and it may become one of your favorites as well. All right, let's see if we can actually find. Maybe we can find the actual map. We might be able to here. All right. These books are very dry. I know that sounds strange, but they are. All right, here we go. Level 1A, page 107. All right. All right, so this is the first level of Rapanathuk, which is known as the Lair of the Dung Monster. And I'm giving you a little bit of a spoiler here. This is the map of level 1 of Rapanathuk. The PCs enter here from a green mausoleum made of green stone, which is a death trap. But when you enter it, the mausoleum seals behind the doors to the mausoleum seal, and the ceiling begins to crush you. And you only have like 5 or 6 rounds to try to find a secret door in the floor, which will let you escape the death trap. So that's how the campaign starts, is with a death trap. Just saying. Then the party makes their way into this area in this section. And this is a fairly normal dungeon. However, in room 1-9 here, you can see here on the map, there's like a kind of icon of like a bunch of stone, like a pillar with a bunch of holes. Basically, there's a bathroom. There's a privy. It's like, a bunch of toilet holes. And in one of the toilets is something called Dungy, the dung monster. It is a mutated killer mimic, the dung monster, that is basically immune to everything. I think the backstory of this thing is that it was, let's see here. Yes, it was once a killer mimic, but it devoured an archmage with his staff of magi who had stopped in response to nature's call. So the mimic ate an archmage on the toilet who had a staff of magi, and it became this unkillable, undefeatable, shit ooze destruction monster of death. So, this post, let me see, actually, this might be better than what I'm doing here. Hold on a sec. Oh, you know what? I'll never be able to find it in fine time. Let's see. Because we made a post for this years ago of this story. The group, we were playing Rapanathuk, and my friend Aaron from the channel, William Brandis, had played with me in this dungeon before. So he knew what was going on, but he took a vow of silence and was just like, I'll just play along until I get to the part where I don't know what's going to happen. So the rest of the party he was with start making their way down this way. And they get to right here, and it's kind of hard to see. But right here, there's a pit trap. Okay. And they avoided the pit trap, and the gelatinous cube, they get a random encounter of a gelatinous cube, and they go, oh, you know what we'll do? We'll lead it back to this pit trap. We'll jump over the pit trap. The gelatinous cube will follow us. It'll fall into the pit trap, and we won't have to worry about the gelatinous cube. And I was like, yeah, that's a really smart idea. So they did that, and the gelatinous cube was trapped at the bottom of the pit. So then the heroes continued up here, and eventually they made their way to the dungeon, to the latrines, and sure enough, Dungy comes flowing outwards. And everybody starts shooting at it and all this other stuff, but it's immune to all damage. So they start like going like, fall back, and they start falling back, and the creature's coming, and they start getting to this point. And at this point, the monster flows onto a couple of people, and it takes the cleric who had just gotten magical full plate armor, and it sucks the cleric and it sucks the wizard into it. Now this is like a gelatinous cube, mimic, ooze, acid death monster. And so the cleric, who had a pretty good strength score, was able to beat the DC 20 strength check needed to pull himself free from the creature's sticky pseudopods and rip his way out. But I did tell him that his armor had been completely destroyed by the acid from being inside of the creature. Meanwhile, the wizard did not have a good strength score, probably a 10, rolled a 19. So I described it as the wizard managed to break himself out of the creature's main body, but several thick pseudopods of goo, shit-stained goo, were still wrapped around one of his arms. And that was like where we ended his turn. So Aaron, at this point, our buddy, Mr. Aaron Smith, William Brandis in the chat, says, okay, I rush over to the wizard and I pull out my short sword, and everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, you know, thinking he's going to cut off the creature's, you know, thick pseudopods. But everyone's like, what are you doing? The creature's immune to all damage. He goes, yeah, I know. The creature is. He hacks off the wizard's arm, because that was the only thing I had described as being stuck to the creature. So he chops off the wizard's arm at the shoulder, or give or take. Now the wizard's free, so they start running back, fleeing from the monster, which, to be fair, Dungy doesn't move that fast. But as they get to this part of the dungeon, they realize I roll for a random encounter, and a pack of ghouls starts chasing them. So now they're stuck. Dungy's crawling up, and the ghouls are coming. The ghouls descend upon the party. Everyone looks to the cleric, because the cleric, this is 3rd edition, has turn undead, and he goes, guys, I used them all up in the graveyard. I have no turn undeads left for the day. And they're like, shit. So now ghouls come rushing over all of the party members, start striking people. Several of the party members get paralyzed. Everybody's about to go down. There's no way that they're going to be able to rescue everybody. But then the cleric tells the rogue, who just cut off somebody's arm, that he has a remove paralysis scroll in his backpack. He can use that on the fighter, remove the paralysis of the fighter. The fighter can grab the paralyzed wizard. The cleric can grab the paralyzed ranger, and then they can flee. So the rogue reaches into the cleric's backpack, pulls out the scroll of remove paralysis. Back in 3rd edition, you could make a check, use magic device check to try to use a scroll, and the rogue had that skill. So when you make the use magic device check, that determines your caster level, and you still have to make a check, though, on the caster level check to see if you can make the check. He rolls a nat 1. So I describe it as, all right, instead of removing paralysis, it casts paralysis on you. Make a fort save. And he was like an elven rogue. Somehow he rolls high enough. He doesn't become paralyzed. the ghouls continue to attack everybody. I think they kill one of the paralyzed people. So the cleric grabs the paralyzed wizard, who doesn't have an arm, by the way, and the rogue, and they flee from the ghouls. And then they think, oh, that, Dungy will scare off the ghouls. And sure enough, Dungy shows up. The ghouls flee because they know they can't beat that thing. And the party stands on the other side of the pit trap like, oh, this is going to be sweet. The Dun monster is going to flow into the pit, and then it and the gelatinous cube will just eat each other. But no, this thing was immune to all damage. So I just described it as going down into the pit. It killed the gelatinous cube. It started coming back up the other side. So they're like, flee for your lives. So they run out, they flee. I make one more random encounter check. Nothing happens. They get to the mausoleum. They run out into the graveyard screaming. Finally, they make it to the road, and there's one more random encounter check, and I roll it, and it was an armed patrol from the nearby city, so they were safe. And everybody's like, ugh. And the cleric's like, well, he's like, I'm so mad. I lost my, armor. And I go, yeah, you lost your armor, your holy symbol, everything, because you were dissolved inside of that. And then the wizard goes, well, what about me? I lost my arm. And I go, that's a great question. What handedness are you? So we randomly rolled to determine what handedness he was. And I was like, sorry, you were right-handed and you lost your right arm. I'm going to have to give you a arcane spell failure percentage check every time you cast a spell, because you're not actually, you're casting with one arm now. And he's like, oh, that sucks. Like, what else could I do? And one of the other players goes, well, you could take the ambidexterity feat. And I was like, yeah, you could take the ambidexterity feat. And he's like, yeah, okay, great. So in the meantime, I've got a 20% chance to cast all my spells. And I said, well, about that, you were in the creature's belly as well. So all of your equipment is destroyed as well, including your spellbook.
$25. Awesome story.
Thank you, Hoyrit. And I go, nope, your spellbook was destroyed as well. And everyone's like, oh my God. And the best part about this tells you the kind of people that run this game. When we posted this story to the forum that was dedicated to this dungeon, the greenstone mausoleum that I was describing was ringed with greenstone gargoyles, which can come to life at night and will fly out across the landscape and try to pick off unwary travelers. And one of the GMs goes, I think you let them off light. I would have randomly rolled to determine what time of day it was to determine if the greenstone gargoyles were active, and I would have had them start picking apart the party. Like he was saying, you let them off easy, you didn't go hardcore enough. And for a group who could ever, was ever not used to getting defeated. It was a pretty great story. There's another Rapanathuk story, which is the first time that we played Rapanathuk, which also involves the dungeon monster, and I will post that into the Discord. So for patrons, if you want to get that second story, I will maybe make a quick little bonus. Maybe I'll make a bonus video and I will put it into the Discord. So there is a preview story to that as well. So yeah, it was a fun time. It was, and that, that's what I'm saying. Like that's the kind of game you either love it or you hate it. And you either roll with the punches or you don't. But like, a person losing their arm because a party member hacked it off while a shit monster mimic swarms over your party. Like, that isn't the stuff of epic high fantasy Tolkien. It's, it's D&D. It's crazy, zany, kind of almost slapstick kind of comedy. And at times, like, you get these moments and these awesome stories and you're like, this is why I play the game, because yes, Rapanathuk is a dungeon. It's all planned out, but that sequence of events that I just described happened algorithmically. It happened because of a series of random encounters, because of a series of choices the players made. That story was, unique to us. And that's what makes it so special. Because yeah, other people probably have encountered that monster before, of course, but probably not exactly like that and not in that way. And that's what makes it so really awesome, So that was my story. Thank you, Hoyrit, for the support on showing your love for the thing, and welcome to the hype boss, Hoyrit. Appreciate you and appreciate the generous tip. Thank you. Frostjack just caught up in time for the story and very glad that they did.
Lazarus Dark tip $10. Haven't been able to catch these live, but this is for preaching the truth on PF2 Playtest Resonance.
Thank you, Lazarus Dark. Yeah, I have not seen you around as much. I don't even know if I've seen you as much on the Discord, buddy. I don't know if you've been busy or what, but we have missed you. Yeah, the Pathfinder 2, what's the word I'm looking for here? The Pathfinder 2 playtest resonance we are using in our current version of Abomination Vaults, and it is awesome. For those of you who don't know, Pathfinder 2 in the beta test had these resonance points, which basically prevented you from spamming scrolls and wands and magical items all day. And it was, I think it was a mistake to not use it. And we're using it in our replay of Abomination Vaults. We're using resonance points. And it's very fun. It's creating a really cool resource mechanic that we really are enjoying. So I think it's really fun. Lazarus Stark, an Arkansas tornado damage kept me busy. Ooh, yeah. Feeling less social. I bet that is the case. Well, Laz, I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for the support then. That means even that much more. Happy to hear that you're doing well, or at least doing okay. So appreciate having you as part of our community. And I really respect the hard work that you put into trying to understand and break this game down, because God knows, somebody's got to do it. Frostjack would love a bonus video. Okay, yeah, we'll do a fun little bonus video, and I'll tell another story of Rapana Thuk involving our mutual friend, of course, Mr. Aaron Smith of Knights of the Last Call fame, and his first foray. Remember, I told you the second foray, he was sworn to secrecy. He was the rogue, by the way, who cut off the player's arm. By the way, a funny story to that. The rogue, the wizard, had gotten his arm cut off. And during the course of fleeing, the group was trying to deal with their paralyzed friends or whatever. And Aaron, playing the rogue, said to the wizard, like, hey, I'm not, the rogue wasn't really strong either. He's like, hey, can you give me a hand with this? And the wizard, played by our buddy, Dan, looked at him deadpan and just went, I already did. And everybody just died laughing. Because obviously he had cut off his hand, but it was just such a great funny pun, and it was so good, and it was fantastic. I'd like to see them put resonance points into the remaster as a variant rule if they can. They won't, Orpheus. They will not. They will not. But I do think I don't think resonance is perfect. I think they could have fixed a few things with it, and they need to make it work better. For certain like alchemical things, but it is overall, I think, a really, really interesting system. It's a great resource, and it's a fantastic way that they could solve some of the issues that we have seen in Pathfinder 2, which is that low-level scrolls are really problematic, is what I would say. Bernardo, sad this is the last book's ranked. How many we missed? Like I said, we probably missed about 100 maybe books, but most of them, Bernardo, at this point are just, Monster Manual 3s, Monster Manual 4s, Monster Manual 5s, Splat Book X, Splat Book Y, Splat Book for Monks, Splat Book for Rangers. It's just a lot of Splat Books. I really do think that we made it through quite a bit of the systems. I'm sure there is stuff that I missed. Like actually right here, like I know we missed these. Like this is the Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game by Robert Schwalb, which they eventually turned into something I think called the Chronicle system, which is generic because they lost the rights to Game of Thrones. So this came out, by the way, before like the show. So it was really interesting because it was like not popular at all. But I'm like, man, if they had just come out with this game a few years later, it would have been really awesome. It's a really cool game that has a really, really awesome intrigue system. This game would be, it would be perfect for playing sort of low fantasy, campaign intrigue. Very, very cool. And what's really cool about it is the character creation system. You and your fellow players create your own noble house. There's like a whole chapter about, damn you people. Hold on. there's a whole chapter about creating your house, and each player is, serves a different role in the house. Maybe you're the arms master. Maybe you're the heir apparent. Maybe you're the second heir. You're not probably like the lord of the house, but like you roll randomly to determine like what's the population like, what region are you from the Dragonstone, the North, the Iron Islands, the Riverlands. Really, really awesome game. This game is actually really, really cool. I've been told that you can car-op it and cheese it, but whatever. I thought this game was really cool. And then, there's Savage Worlds, which we never got to. There's Symbaroum, which we never got to. So, there's still some games left on the shelf, but maybe eventually we get to it someday. I did want to shout out that Game of Thrones game. That was pretty cool. Did you make any modifications to the resin system to make it fit better with the full release of PF2E? As of right now, no, Frostjack, because I just want to play it as is. As is, the way Resonance works is each day after taking quote unquote a full rest or whatever, you get a number of resonance points equal to your level plus your charisma modifier. In order to invest in any item with the investment trait, you have to spend a resonance point when you equip it or when you put it on. So cool. If you want to put on your magical bracers, it costs a resonance point. If you want to use an item, a consumable, then like a potion or a scroll, that also takes a resonance point. And right now we've just been playing it as is, just because we want to see how it plays out first, and make sure that it's before we start making any changes to it. But there probably are some changes that I would make to it. Mostly like. My thought process, this might not be the case. We don't have anybody obviously being an alchemist. My guess is that if an alchemical item had the infused trait, I probably wouldn't make it count against resonance. Because that might even be the rule. I'm not 100% sure, 100% exactly. I'd have to look it up, but like that way alchemists could still give people potions and not have it, be a problem. But, I am honestly curious about your opinions on Suede. Oh, Savage Worlds. I don't love it, and I don't love it, and I don't hate it. Savage Worlds is one of those games where I go, I probably would rather be playing Fate, or now that I've learned about Broken Compass, I'd probably rather be playing Broken Compass. So that's kind of where I am with Savage Worlds. I've always felt like it felt kind of, at the edges and the careers and stuff like that. It kind of felt like a D20 type game with a little bit more narrative elements to it, but Lazarus Dark. The thing about trying to put resonance back into Pathfinder 2nd edition is that it was an incomplete system in the playtest. Correct. And that was its biggest flaw. So you really do need to complete it to make it good. Yes, agreed. You love Sway. You love Sway. Just saying. Yeah. Again, I don't think Savage Worlds is bad or good. Like, it's just, for me personally, I don't know that it does something that makes me go, wow, this is why I want to play Savage Worlds. Bennies are okay, but to me, it's like, if I'm going to play with Bennies, I think I'd rather play with Fate points, and I'd rather be playing Fate. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But how does combat work in Fate? Is it similar to D&D? No, not at all, Square Peg. Not at all. Very, very different. You do not have hit points. When you take damage, you can, you have these stress boxes that you can or can't take. And then if you don't want to use your stress boxes, or you don't have any stress boxes, your character takes kind of like injuries onto them, which are new aspects of your character. It's very, very different. So yeah, they're, consequences is what they're called. I called them injuries, but they're called consequences because technically these consequences, Square Peg, can be anything. Like, you could be in let's say your character was at a social event. Okay. You would use the same combat rules as if your character was in a sword fight, because at a social event, maybe your characters are trying to, kind of smooth, what's the word? They're trying to ingratiate themselves with this noble, and they're trying to get a private some private time with the Baron. And while they're at the party, they're trying to, not make an ass of themselves. And there's another noble there who knows that the party members aren't supposed to be there. And so they keep trying to, embarrass you, and they keep trying to attack you socially by like calling out how your character is dressed like a country bumpkin. And I would make that NPC would attack you, and you would take stress, because they use this term stress because stress could mean combat stress. It could mean social stress. And instead of taking a consequence like injured leg, broken arm, you might take, social pariah, or you might take embarrassed of upbringing, or shameful secret revealed. And so now that becomes something, a part of the game that people can use through the aspect system in order to sort of gain advantages against you, because your character has that. So it's kind of a really interesting system. Do you have any D&D second edition box sets, campaign settings or otherwise? Rocket Vault games. Yeah, I got a lot. We didn't really get to too many of them. I'm trying to think where they all are. I have a bunch of Forgotten Realms ones. I've got Forgotten Realms of the North, Moonsea, Realms of the South. I got a bunch of Forgotten Realms box sets. I have the Planescape box set, Dark Sun box set. I'm trying to think what else. I love the box sets. I wish I had bought more of them. Maybe that's something I'll eventually do as like a collector, is buy more box sets. Because it's just something fun. I mean, PDFs are great, but like those box sets with all the handouts, the inserts, and the maps were so cool. I loved them so much. Yeah, London makes a great point. We did do a Fate stream a couple months ago. I think it was back in January, maybe timeframe. So definitely check it out. Ooh, Ruins of Zentel Keep. That is one that I did not have Rocket Vault, but my buddy did have. And I remember being like, dude, why do you don't even like Forgotten Realms? Why do you even have that? And it's just because he liked the Zentarum, and he was like using the Zentarum in his homebrew campaign as sort of like, he basically was just like stealing them from Forgotten Realms. So he bought Ruins of Zentel Keep, and I was like, oh, come on, man. I wish I could have that. But this was like when I was younger, and I didn't have the money that I had now. I was working at a pizza place. And I couldn't afford it, but that's pretty sick. Your Gen Con 95 badge, that's pretty sick. My first Gen Con was 01. My first Gen Con was the last year that they did it in Milwaukee. We flew out to Milwaukee because it was the last year of Gen Con. I had just graduated high school, or maybe I was like a freshman in college, and we went to Gen Con. And then the next year is when it moved to Indianapolis. And I have been every year in Indianapolis since, except the last couple years, because I missed 2020 because of COVID. I missed 2021 because I didn't want to go because it still seemed really unsafe. And then in 2022, I was going to go, but I couldn't get a hotel room. So now 2023, I've got a hotel room. I've got my badge. It's the triumphant return of Derek to Gen Con. And I'm interested to see how much has changed, because the last time I went in 2019, it was a madhouse, and there was way too many people there, and there were way too many casuals there. And I was very upset that there was like, whole groups of people that like clearly weren't that into gaming. What are you doing at my Gen Con? Go away. Sorry, I didn't want to seem like I'm gatekeeping, but I got to be honest with you. When it comes to Gen Con, yes, Gen Con, I don't remember what the 2019 attendance was like 70,000. I'd get rid of half the people. I will be so much happier if half the people did not go to Gen Con. John, hey, it's been a while, buddy. Welcome back. We were just talking about Fate, and we just directed somebody to your and I's Fate stream. So there we go. It's pretty cool. Thanos did nothing wrong as long as we're talking about Gen Con attendees. Well, John, I bet 2021 was probably very empty, but I also know that like a lot of vendors didn't go, and I don't want it to be super empty. Like again, 30,000, 40,000 was awesome. Like the first couple of years at Indy were fun. And then when the restaurants and everybody else started figuring out like, oh, these nerds have a lot of money, we should really cater to them. And then, you'd go downtown to Indianapolis, and like all the, what it was called, Rock Bottom Brewery and the Ram and all these other really awesome, cool bar restaurants would like completely change over their whole look and their menu to be really nerd focused and D&D focused. And, like the Ram got sponsored by like War Machines or Privateer Press. And so like all of their stuff was like, they had like big, warjacks in the restaurant. It was awesome. It was, I mean, it was just so cool to be surrounded by all that. I just, I was like embracing my nerddom. I loved it. I loved it so much. And it's a shame because I don't think I've been to the Ram in 8 years because the wait now is 3.5 hours or 4 hours. It really is. Like and it sucks because, nowadays, I'll be honest with you. Nowadays, I'm at Gen Con. I'm there to play games. I'm there to see things. I'm not there to wait 3 hours to get a restaurant. Nowadays, a lot of times we just go over to Circle Center Mall and we'll just get food court food, or we'll do the food trucks. And I love the food trucks. I'm glad they brought the food trucks in, but I missed it when Gen Con was smaller. Oh, the Ram may be very well closed. Maybe they closed after COVID. Again, I haven't been to Gen Con since 2019, but I can tell you, because I didn't go in 2020 and I didn't go in 2021, but I can tell you that even though I went in 2019, the last time I went to the Ram was probably like 2015 or something like that, or 2014, because it just became so popular and there were so many people there. Like, you can't even get into that Steak and Shake. Like, forget about it. Like, it used to be that, you'd be at the con hall till like midnight. Your last draft would finish. And you'd go to Steak and Shake with your friends, or like you'd be at a late night event. You're coming out of the con hall. You just had an amazing time. It's summertime in Indy. It's beautiful weather. You go over to the Steak and Shake. You get some cheese fries, the shoestring fries. You get some like double patty burger, the Frisco melt. Fuck yeah. And now forget about it. Like, it's a million people, and it's just, I don't like it. The food trucks have been good. I just basically now do the food trucks or the mall food court, but yeah. In 2021, they started selling nerd-themed beer outside the venue, and it took away a little bit of business from the restaurant bars. The nightlife was popping, though. I know they have that beer tent now down on the street, but, yeah. Frostjack says, I'm just waiting for NightCon, to be honest, and Boothby says, we just need our own con. I mean, I won't disagree with that. Obviously, I am going to try to make NightCon happen next year. Possibly in August. We'll see if we can do it, but we'll see. We may have to make certain logistical plan differences depending on what's going on, what our constituent people is. But it'll probably be during the summertime to make it easier for people with kids and stuff like that. I know that my two co-hosts, Bob and Aaron, both have children. So you have a different conference to go to Gen Con other than Gen Con. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm going to get a chance to meet some patrons there, and I'm looking forward to having a good time there. So do what I do, pre-order your food and pick it up. Yeah, but it loses some of the vibe. I like sitting down at restaurants with my friends, and we always used to, like I said, we'd always go to the Ram, we would go to Rock Bottom Brewery, we would go to St. Elmo's, and it was like those became impossible to get into, and it was just a problem. Waiting for anything in Australia. Well, I'm sorry. That is unlikely to happen. That being said, I do want to visit Australia sometime in the next couple of years because it's been on my list for a long time. So 14-hour drive to Vegas. I could do that in one day, right? Absolutely, London. Absolutely. Roll for Combat says, go with me. There are a ton of good places 1 block away with no wait. Now, you are right. No, listen, I've been to Indy a lot of times. I know where you can go to get a quick meal. But I'm just saying that some of my favorite places became everybody else's favorite places. I know I'm sounding very hipster here, and I didn't want to have to change. I wanted what I wanted, and I wanted what I was used to having. And then all these people started coming to Gen Con that, quite frankly, I'm like, why are you at Gen Con? Yeah, right. There's nothing worse than a great pub that's too busy to get into. That's well said, Orpheus. That's well said. I can't justify more than one overseas trip next year, and if there's only one, it's going to be NightCon. Wow. All the feels, Frostjack. All the feels. I appreciate it. Well, that's one of the reasons why, if we do it, man, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it really, really right. We're gonna do it right. So I would be really excited to meet patrons like Frostjack. If they made the trip from overseas, I would be very, very, very pleased to meet them and have a fun time and just play games and hang out and be in Vegas and go get crazy, gamble, drink a little, whatever, have fun, but game a lot. That'd be really fun. I'm going to Japan in October. That's crazy. Who knows? Maybe my flight will get lost and we'll end up in Aussie land. There you go. Japan's crazy. I've been to China. That was crazy. That was the longest trip I've ever been on, though. That was a long flight. I'm a long flight. That's one of the reasons why I haven't gone to Australia or Japan or Thailand or any of the other places I've really wanted to go, because that flight to China made me go like, I don't know that I can be on a plane this long again. Yes. What are we even doing here? What are these people even doing here? Sounds like anime cons. They were amazing in the early 2000s, and then they gained popularity. And by late 2000s, I stopped going because they got too popular, too corporate, and stopped being fun for me. Yeah, I mean, Laz. I mean, here's part of the core issue. The core issue is that at Gen Con, say Paizo or Fantasy Flight Games, which are some of the bigger, bigger booths, bigger presences in the con hall, but even smaller game, like if Luke Crane Publishing is there, Burning Wheel HQ is there, and they've got Burning Wheel, Luke Crane might even be there. It doesn't matter how big they make the con hall. It doesn't matter if they extend the con into, halls I, J, and K. If they put the board game library over in the RCA Dome or whatever they're calling it these days, the field house, there's still only one Paizo booth. There used to be 35,000 attendees and one Paizo booth. Now there are 70,000 attendees and one Paizo booth. So if you want to have face-to-face time with Jason Bowman or James Jacobs or, any of these, Paizo designers or some of your favorite board game designers, now there's still only one of them. So now it's like you have an hour wait just to get inside the Paizo booth. I'm like, I paid $120 for my badge, and I'm paying $300+ a night for my hotel room, plus travel expenses, plus food. I'm here to play games. I'm here to see stuff. I'm not here to wait in line. So that's just me being, kind of gatekeepy. Now, I'm hoping that, maybe COVID kind of set people back. Maybe, people kind of realized, it's not really worth going. It wasn't fun. Maybe the people were going and then they realized, it wasn't really for me. Because John is saying, I've noticed there seems to be a stark drop off of casuals in the hobby lately. I'm not sure if it's because of all the OGL drama or whatnot, but a lot of these critters have seemed to leave. And again, I don't care about the wider hobby. Let everybody play. Let people spend their money. I mean, play their games that they want to. I'm just saying that there was a lot of people at Gen Con that I kind of felt like they were tourists. And I know that sounds horrible to say, but they were tourists, and I'm like, why are you here? Why did you make this trip to Gen Con? Go to Disney World, go to Universal, like have fun with your family there. I'm not saying this is a bad place for you. I'm just saying there's only so much space, and Gen Con seems to refuse to cap tickets. That's the other. I mean, Gen Con could also say we're capping attendance at 50,000, and they won't do it, and they just keep letting people in. And the convention center hasn't gotten bigger. So hopefully it's, it won't be an issue this year. I'm a little, let me take a look at here. Gen Con attendance. All right. This should be on the wiki page here. I've seen it before here. All right. Okay. First year at Indy was 25,000. Then it was 25, 27, 28, 27, 30, 36, 41,000, 49,000, My last year I went, it was 70,000 people. Now, in 2020, they canceled because of COVID. In 2021, it was 35,000, which again was half of what there was in 2019. But that was their, kind of on super restricted duty percentage. In 2022, it was 50,000. I can handle 50,000. But I think if it's going to go up to 60 or 70,000 again, I don't know. Maybe I'll stop going. I don't know. It did get better. They opened the stadium. Yeah, they opened the stadium for the board game library. That's the only thing that's really over there. Not to mention the stadium is kind of a pain in the ass to get to. You got to walk down that really long corridor. It's not really part of the con hall. So any good con in Texas? I don't know about role-playing games, but I've been to Board Game Geek Con before, and that's usually in Texas, I think. Yeah, Board Game Geek Con is in Dallas, Texas. But I've been to that a couple times, but that's not for role-playing games. Other than that, I don't know about Texas cons. I've only been to Board Game Geek Con. Anyways, well, it took a little longer than expected, but hey, I want to say thank you to everybody for making such nice donations and supports and chats tonight. We had a lot of fun with this series. Again, we covered I don't know, probably somewhere around 150 to 200 books, something like that, plus whatever we did tonight. So we still probably had couple hundred books, but again, viewership has kind of dropped off on this, and we're not really getting a ton of clout, and we're going to be starting our root game soon. We want to bring back some Pathfinder 2 games, and keep all of like the RPG first looks, RPG deep dives. I'd love to get more Pathfinder 2 content, more GM advice. And we got to figure out a way to fit all the shows in. So we may have to add a third show. And we've done our Sunday streams before, so maybe I'll have to bring that back, and that'll just be part of it. I've also talked about maybe adding a show midweek during the day. So maybe a Wednesday or a Friday or something, afternoon, as a way to kind of add in some additional shows. Maybe it would only be an hour or 90 minutes, because I probably couldn't do a full long 3-hour show like I do in the evenings. But, something as a way to get more content out to our loyal viewers, and of course, our incredible patrons who support this channel, not just with their tips and super chats, but with their monthly Patreon donations. So thank you so very, very much for all of that. Roman asks, how much tip is needed for you to keep streaming? It depends, Roman. Do you mean right now, tonight, or do you mean to keep doing the book streams? Part of the thing with the book streams, Roman, is, I want to make sure I'm making content that all my audience and all my patrons, want to engage with. And, if the percentage of people who are viewing these videos is lower than traditional. And, I do want to respect that no matter how much tips I get, that I'm ultimately making content that my audience really is, kind of engaged with and wants to see. So, but I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you. Again, we can always pull books off the shelf and do deep dives and stuff like that. I think, Roman, honestly, what's more interesting is probably doing the systems than, all the splat books. And again, a lot of what I have left behind me are the splat books. So, we'll eventually get around to it. So, all right, everybody, I am going to dip out. We'll be back Thursday. I don't know what we're going to do. I'll probably put it, to a Patreon poll, because I'm not quite sure yet. We're still kind of in a transition phase because we're still finishing up our studio. I was supposed to do a lot of work last week on it, but I got back from my cruise and I just didn't want to do any work. So this week I'm supposed to be back in my studio and doing some work. So, but I got a bathroom to remodel too. So, but I'm trying to pay somebody to do it. So hopefully they will actually do it, and then I don't have to do it. All right, everybody. We'll see what Thursday. It's a wild card. So we'll see you then. And we look forward to talking to you next time on Knights of Last Call. Bye, everybody.